Good evening and welcome to EGI 2 Stream 11. I'm so glad that everyone is... Good evening and welcome to EGI 2. Thanks for the sub Estibo73 and what a great way to start the stream. It's EGI 2 Stream 11 tonight. We've never gotten up to number 11 before on EGI 2, and I'm so grateful that we've accomplished that here this evening as well. And of course, in the studio we have special correspondent Allan Resnick and our special guest that I think a lot of people will see.
They know me
because they see you, and here you are. And her name is Kate O'Connor, and she is a Final Fantasy expert. And
Robbie,
what?
Robbie, there's a hype train has started. So if you're just joining us now, when there's a hype train going, Robbie tells a story for the duration of the hype train. So it's already at 62%. You have 5 or 4 more minutes to tell the story. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan, and back to you, Kate, and back to you, Story. And here's the story. And Kate, you're obviously a learned person, and you've read books, and of course, you've got your moral compass that you've defined for yourself through your own reading, own intellectual journey.
Thank you.
So this journey, I think, will
Robbie, tell the story.
The journey that I am about to describe is a journey of a. You ever hear that? You ever hear, Allan? You ever hear that term, the roof of the world?
The roof of the world.
A lot of times it refers to a mountaintop, or perhaps one of the polar ice caps. And they call it the roof of the world. But this story is about the roof of the. This is a story about what if you were a poor, if you were a pauper. And a pauper who lived in a place that just happened to have inside it, on top of it, the roof of the world.
The roof of the world.
Imagine most paupers, I think that most people will agree, live in there's some destitution. The roof that most people associate with pauperism, I think, is one that maybe is a little too mossy, or perhaps has some creaks or some you got to go up there. You've got to fix the roof. You got to fix the roof. You're constantly fixing the roof.
And that's how a lot of paupers die.
Well,
they fall off the roof when they try and fix it.
Right, but if you find that you're pauperish and your roof is the roof of the world, what are you supposed to do? Well, this is the story that I'll tell. The pauper that we're talking, the pauper in this story is a pauper named. His name was his name was Admiral, and Admiral it wasn't Admiral. It was something. One of the other. You know how sometimes the Brits will say, instead of saying lieutenant, they'll say lieutenant.
I didn't know. No.
Yeah, sort of.
That's interesting.
So his name,
Lieutenant.
He was
Lieutenant?
He was just, you know what he was? He was just the pauper. He was the pauper. He was the town pauper, and everyone just called him Pauper.
Oh wait, Robbie.
What's up?
Are you talking about Legionnaire's disease?
No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about the roof of the world, and one lucky fella who was having a tough go of things found himself in control of the roof of the world. And how that power and how that influence, I don't know if you could call it necessarily a power at the very top here, but the facts remain that it was the roof of the world, and he had it, and people wanted to see it, and so he was able to make himself a bit of a business. But before he had the roof of the world, he had, of course, a tragedy in his life, and that tragedy. And so many stories begin with tragedy. If you can imagine losing a loved one, if you can imagine losing your friends, or having people despise you because they think that you've done something terrible, well, this is a story that I think will speak to you if you've ever done something terrible, or seen something terrible, or loved someone dearly and have had them disappear in violent circumstances, just the worst kind. And so what happened was...
Robbie! Let me hit the button. Mail celebration. No. Robbie, you got the hype train. You got to the level 2. We're on the level 2 hype train. You have 5 or 4 more minutes. Back to you, Robbie. Tell this story so good.
Back to you, Kate. And so this story actually begins before the roof ever showed up, and that story began when a young man, also still named Pauper, but they spelled it differently. before the Great Tragedy.
How did they spell it?
So pauper is Pauper normally, but before he was the pauper, he was pauper with Pawper. So
a silent B, a silent B.
Oh, mostly they just said it a little bit quicker and with a little bit more of an inflection of a kind of like a happier feeling, a joyous feeling. You say pauper. Popper's coming. Popper's coming down the road. Popper's at the restaurant.
Popper's coming.
And we're so happy.
Robbie, is it kind of like when stores sell VCR cleaner, but it's colloquially known as popper?
I don't know what that means. This is you have to picture a time period before VCR stores were ever even in the shining glimpse of the human imagination. Now this is way back when people subsisted mostly on dirt and scrounging, and of course warring every once in a while and going on great cannibalistic excesses. Sort of you wouldn't call it these days a cruise, but yes, getting on a large boat as
Robbie,
big as many people.
Do you mean like the Donner Party?
No, I'm talking about boats. Boats covered in human remains, boats covered in bones, and hands dangling in the water, and rotting flesh, skins tanned on the boat's surface, on the deck of the boat. Just
you're describing a rotting boat of some kind.
A bunch of people who don't have a lot of time in their lives to do anything but wild things will do when they get into that kind of a mindset. So you'd have like a little village, and this is Popper's village, of course. Popper, and he was a popular pop. He was popular. And people loved him, and people liked to see him, and everyone has the little thing that happens when someone is loved, where a little light shines behind their head for a while. Well, Popper had that, and everybody saw it, and everybody would always talk about it. They said, oh, it's like he's got the light behind his head, and isn't it wonderful to see him and to feel his presence? And hey, we're about to get on the big boat and go on one of our cannibalistic excesses and eat the next town over and tan their skins on the deck of the ship. So on one of these journeys, to tell the story, Popper was in the midst of the bloodletting, in the midst of the fighting in the next door village, because every once in a while they'd hollow out the village, they'd kill everyone there, eat the people, use the skins,
have you ever seen it where they make everyone get inside of a church or a structure, and they lock the door and then they light the church on fire?
Well, this is before churches or structures. This is before churches. This is before structures. They wouldn't have even had the ability to do that.
But they had boats.
All they had was boats.
But there was a roof. You were talking about a roof. That's part of a structure.
Well, that's part of. We get to that later.
Okay, got it.
So this is before
the roof of the world.
Yes, and this is where the story gets interesting, because they go to the village would get hollowed out, and then a few years later it would fill back in, and of course the village that everyone that lived in Popper's village had extremely long lifespan, because of the sheer amount of human chemicals that they were consuming. So you talk about the Fountain of Youth being an actual sort of a pond or a spa of some kind that gods and demigods would come and dip their little
Robbie.
toes
1 minute
in.
warning. You have 1 more minute to finish the story.
It turns out that the eternal life that we so desire involves a great deal of refining of the bodily fluids, that's stomach acids and various brain juices, and I mean, it's a nasty business, and we don't do it anymore simply because it causes such a great deal of pain, and I think is a bit energy intensive. But back then, again, people had more time on their hands. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have
30-second warning. We're not going to do it this time.
Oh, wait. My goodness gracious.
Oh, we did it.
Oh.
Robbie, we did it. I was worried we had drained the audience dry, but they have a few more pennies left in their little pockets. We're on a level 3 pockets. Level 3 hype train. The story continues for 5 or 4 more minutes. Back to you, Robbie.
5 or few more minutes, and so on this particular, the town had filled back up. Of course, it was like a trap. The town next door river was not just a town, but it was a trap. And when people would move in, there'd be like a little string that would go all the way down the river back to the main town, where Papa and all these kind of mutant people lived that were drinking all these crazy liquids and making themselves live a long time. They would feel the string vibrate, and of course, they had like a great like a long pole in the middle of town that was covered in bells and bone and skulls with you ever do that thing or see that thing where you get you hollow out a skull,
a maypole,
and then you
like
put
a maypole,
and you put sort of like a maypole, but you put the finger bones into the skull, and then you shake it around. And you got yourself like a maraca or what is that called?
A finger hole.
A finger hole for a friend that can't be that. And they had a whole tower of them that would make a lot of noise when anyone moved to the town. So they would know, okay, so we got it in a few weeks' time. Once people are settled in this trap that we've laid, this town that is simply just a trap for our own consumption purposes, then we'll ferry up to the river in our big boat, covered in horror, and we'll just absolutely take advantage of every single person there, in the sense that we will take advantage of their bodily fluids by almost like taking a herd of large large cattle or chickens and putting them all through one of those big chippers, whatever they how do they make chicken nuggets? They're basically taking human people and turning them into very useful nuggets.
Hey, Robbie, have you ever seen Jamie Oliver make pink slime? Jamie Oliver made pink slime for some American school children, and he said, "Here you go, kids. That's your chicken nugget." Pink slime is sort of all the worst parts of the chicken ground up into sort of a froth.
But these were not the difference between me and Jamie Oliver is that I'm a storyteller, and Jamie Oliver is a hack who does a lot of crazy stuff on television and never has anybody question it. But let me tell you, because we were about to get to the interesting part of the story.
Oh, good.
Which is they get to the town. They start the killing. They start culling, I think is what they call it. When there's a cull, they cull the herd.
They
saw this other settlement as a herd for them to
2 more minutes.
consume.
We're only at 2%. You're not going to. This is the lowest hype train we've ever had. We're not going to get too high because the audience is run dry.
And we're not. But we can't. You got to. It's in the midst of all this. In the midst of the clouds of blood and the sprays of gore. Popper sees a beautiful woman standing several feet taller than what normal people.
What color was her hair, Robbie?
Her hair was. She didn't have any hair. She was a bald woman. She was way ahead of her time.
Tattoo on the skull? Tattoo?
No tattoos. She was a pure.
Robbie, you did it. Robbie, it went from 2% to 100%. Someone who did it, Turbo Commander, I think.
Seraphic.
Someone gave a lot of subs. So thank you,
Turbo
Commander.
Thank you for the hype train. And thank you for this, because people are going to want to hear about this.
The story just got really good. This
slightly
huge
taller than normal
woman.
bald woman was standing in the middle of it, and she was gorgeous, Allan and Kate. She was gorgeous, unbelievably one of the prettiest things anyone had ever seen on the face of the planet, and the planet had not been around that long. And neither had people, so we know that was people were able to gauge that. It's not like now where beauty is such a it's a more democratic process. I mean, this.
Please give money. I need to hear the rest of this.
Almost like almost like she was the dictator, and the dictator of love. And the love was coming, and the love was in Popper's heart.
This is your best story.
And it was growing, and it was almost as if he could feel it. He was so messed up. He was so absolutely just jacked up with all these weird human derived chemicals that he'd been drinking his whole life. He had crazy like spikes coming out of the back of it. Like those in.
Toot toot,
like a deep fear, like when the people get like the virus infection, like they get all those weird spines on their back.
Like a rash, like a bad rash.
like almost like a porcupine spine. And all over their backs. And he had that. Not everybody had that, but everybody had their own little distinct little idiosyncrasies when it came to how their bodies responded to the consumption of these alchemical soups. And breads, you call it sweet breads. That's what they call. That's what they call bread. Yeah. So we all know what that is. So, point is,
I know what
that
sweetbreads is. That's
Papa
what
sees
chefs try to cook to act cool.
I don't. Is she making fun of me?
I don't know, but tell the story.
Okay, so we got to. Okay, but he loved her, and on first sight he loved her, and so did everybody else. And everybody, and all these crazy, violent, mutant people. Who had spent the last 50 to 60 years drinking soups and eating sweetbreads from their human victims, dropped their weapons, dropped their hammers and clubs, and some of them had guns, Allan. And that was an odd thing because we think of the guns as being something coming much later during the sort of the rise of the Middle Kingdom and
Robbie,
the advent of gunpowder.
Like an automatic or a rifle or a semi-automatic?
We just can't know.
We
just can't. But we do know.
But they didn't have structures. They had guns. They didn't
have structures. No structures. No churches. But yes, guns and yes, some sort of chemical refining process. So.
But this was all happening outdoors.
What we picture when we picture the old days as being like a bunch of quiet people sitting in hovels.
Get back to the woman who's the big woman with no hair. The beautiful woman.
She wasn't that big. She was just maybe 2 or 3 heads taller than a normal, the tallest man you can think of.
You made it sound like she was really big, Robbie. That's not
Who's that basketball player that everyone's always talking about? He's always at the basketball games and they're saying, "Goodness gracious, that man is tall." Well, imagine that, but
that's pretty big. Basketball players are big.
Incredibly seraphic, angelic woman who immediately just draws the eye and makes and an undying love blooms inside of you at the very sight of her.
Okay, but Robbie, did she have tomboy style like Katharine Hepburn?
Oh, good
trousers,
question. Good question.
Or was she wearing a flirty skirt like Ariana Grande?
She was definitely wearing nothing at all, unfortunately, for a lot of people, and that's
not even a modest, a modest.
One more minute, please give money to this because I really like this story. I need to know how this is going to end. One more minute.
And we know we try to keep things clean. We try to keep things family friendly on the show. But unfortunately, when you go back and when you look at these old stories, when you look at the tales and the morality plays that begin the quest towards
Game Quoter. Oh, thank you, Game Quoter. Oh my God, you did it, Robbie. Thank you, Game Quoter. Gifted a lot of subs. You've hit the next level of hype train. The story continues. The story just gets good. And Kate, just so you know, these stories always get incredibly sexual towards the end.
So
that's kind of what's happening now with this big naked woman.
That's definitely not true.
Well,
just because she was naked doesn't mean it was graphic, Allan.
That's exactly right, Robbie. And I want to say that if someone's wearing a skimpy little thing just covering up barely anything, that's naughtier than naked because you kind of want to pull it off to see the naked. But if you just see naked, you're like, maybe they're just in a natural hot spring.
And she wasn't doing, she wasn't doing anything. She wasn't trying to move around. She wasn't trying to lift things up or make or put something on her eye or what I'm saying.
What do you mean?
She's just
put something on her eye. What do you mean?
Well, what
she wasn't being a tease. She wasn't being a tease.
Women a lot of times women in magazines are asked to just put something on their they'll put like a cookie over their eye or something like that, and they'll be like, buy this cookie as soon as you can. Otherwise, I'm gonna eat it.
Like Jessica Rabbit.
Exactly, just like Jessica Rabbit.
Oh, right, yes, she always had that cookie on her
story,
eye.
But point is that they took and her name was her name was, what was her name?
Please be Vanessa.
It was no. It was something. It was
What was her name?
Her name was Flounder. Flounder,
like the fish,
exactly, like
from
Little Mermaid. So Flounder was absolutely just a tremendously beautiful person on the inside and on the outside. And she stopped all this killing. She made all of the, and she gathered Papa and all of his friends and relatives and village and all the community together, stopped the killing, chased all of the other people away that would have been killed. They still would have killed them eventually, and she knew that because not only was she very tall, but she also had a very large brain.
And guess what?
It kind of extended past, almost like what you call the xenomorphs. Yeah, sort of like that. So she had a head. But instead of
Robbie!
a hard helmet.
Robbie, shut up! Oh wait.
But instead of a hard a hard helmet like the xenomorphs had.
Robbie, you did it. Another level of hype train has continued. Thank you, Scampy Pants.
This one kind of
4 or 5 more minutes to do it. We're levels. That was level 6, I think.
This kind of drooped down like an earlobe down her lower back, and that's why she didn't have any hair because her brain was so big.
Her brain
was so big that instead of that it pushed past the skull, or what we would normally think of as a regular sized skull. and it just kept going into this long, like an earlobe, where it would just go out and then kind of flop down.
Oh, like one of the more modern Star Wars women.
Exactly, and a lot of people will say, obviously, Star Wars pulls all these references from older movies and westerns and samurai pictures, and this is kind of like that. So they bring Flounder home to Papa's village, and everyone's like, well, who's she gonna move in with? Is she gonna move in with me?
When you say, Robbie, when you say move in, what are you talking about? Because they don't have structures. So
they don't have any structures. They don't have any, but they do have. They don't have any structures, but they have. What's that like?
Areas?
Yeah, they have.
Guess
like
what
they
had?
have like dedicated areas. I think just like with the string, or like a kind of a string that's made from.
They had street grates.
Street grates.
And when Flounder stepped onto the street grate, her skirt flew up, and that's what they based Marilyn Monroe off of.
Well, that might be the case if she had any clothes on at all, but no, she stayed clothesless without them the entire time.
Wow.
She says she's also got these giant hands, just like, so not only is she very tall and has the long brain that hangs like down and on her back like an earlobe,
giant hands to stroke it with.
Because she would need to move it around every once in a while to kind of get, in case, because if you don't, it's just like having any other kind of organism on your back. You need to shift it around when you get tired, and she needed to do that with her brain. So she would need to. So in her hands, so she would need to reach not only down. So I can look at this. I can only really reach down there. But if I were to have much larger hands, I could reach possibly down all the way to my sacrum area, because of the longer fingers and the greater pads. So she had long fingers, great pads, and she could pick up all sorts of things. And so she picked up, rather than saying who she wanted to move in with, she just picked up Popper.
Popper.
So Popper was the lucky guy.
2 more minutes, please use the train emojis. Use those train emojis. 2 more minutes.
Popper's dedicated area, and they made themselves a bit of a life there. They had all sorts of they had picture making contests, and they jumped up and down, and they
cleaned their guns.
They cleaned the gun. No, they left the guns behind because that was kind of one of the reasons.
Quick note, Robbie, when the story was kind of getting hot, sexy hot, you got the hype train going quick.
I tried to talk about big hands to stroke it with.
Thank you.
So this is, and I don't want to get into this kind of a detail. But the fact of the matter is that even because she didn't have, when I said that she didn't have any details.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like, if you see a picture,
1 minute and 30 seconds.
See a picture in one of these, if you see a picture or a pornography, you see all the details. You see all the red spots and the dark spots and all of the stuff that's just.
Robbie, it just jumped up from like 0 to 100, just like that. And thank you, Game Quarter. Thank you for all those wonderful tier 1 subs you gifted. The story's getting hot and sexy. See, as soon as you said weird sex stuff about porno, it jumped up. It jumped right up. So the story continues.
What people want to hear is people want to know their history. They want to see where all these ideas come from. They want to see the Enlightenment didn't just that makes it. I never liked that term, the Enlightenment in the 18th century, because it makes it sound like
off in the chat if you want the story to be hot and sexy or boring and old.
Don't listen to any. I can't even look at. It doesn't matter what kind of a poll or what kind of a vote you're trying to take, because the story is the story and there ain't no changing that. All right.
We're about to be.
So what I was trying to say was the reason that I didn't say she's like like a Ken doll, Barbie doll type of situation where there's nothing at all there. She had her details, but they just weren't where we normally would place them in this grand scheme of things. And one of the And this is where I struggle a little bit, because again, I do think that it's important that this is a family show and people feel comfortable that they could watch this show with their family.
It's not a family show.
But if she moves that giant like brain lobe to the side a little bit, there it was. I mean, everything you needed.
Vulva
right
back there.
I'm not going to put any names on it. I'm just saying whatever you needed was back there.
That's
back behind
vulva
the brain.
back there.
back behind the brain, there was just a nicely designed, very, very clean and concise and just a conservatively placed arrangement of details.
Robbie, this is your best EGI2 story ever. Back to you, Robbie.
And so if Papa, being the sort of like freak of nature that he was able to
find it,
put the details to use and to make they were able to come together as a group, a couple. A group can be a couple, two people can be a group, and they were grouped together and they shared their experiences.
Wow.
And a few months later, that's when the tragedy began.
Oh no. What happened, Robbie?
Well,
what happened?
Everything was going fine.
2-minute warning.
And they were
you
trying.
have 2 minutes to tell the story. I don't think you're going to get to the next level.
Everything was going fine and they were trying, but then the details shut down.
Oh.
And it became clear that the brain was getting heavier. So as her what happens Flounder was part of a special race of human beings that we don't really talk about no more because we don't have a lot of information.
If you're about to talk about organ failure, I'm going to stop you now because my cat is in
So,
early stage renal failure and I don't want to hear about this.
I can't tell the story without telling you some of what I got to tell you.
Keep the kidneys out of it, please.
The kidneys aren't out of it, but the intestines are. Intestines are in.
Oh boy.
So So Flounder had it's not Flounder's intestines. I should say that. So we're not gonna have to do an autopsy on that amazing. I mean, she just is an amazing woman who had just an incredible set of. She was a loving person. We will remember her fondly always.
1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. We're hearing some tragic turn in the story. I really want to know what happens to this beautiful, beautiful woman.
You got to imagine this is that.
Oh my God.
When humans were first coming out of the once we were leaving Africa
Sub-Sahara.
and going into the Eurasian steppe and into the cradle of civilization, we were still eating a lot of animals just straight. We're just like pick up a rodent, bite its head off, suck everything down, toss the empty carcass away. And as a result of that, we had all of this gut bacteria that made our intestines extremely large as early human beings.
So, it's so close, you guys. 20 seconds. Thank you, Tugboat Commander. We have 98%. We have 16 seconds to finish this hype train and hear the rest of the story. Oh!
No, we're up to 100%. Okay, so
Joe Botnick, put us over the edge. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, friend of the show, Joe.
Thank you, friend of the show.
This crarazy story is going to continue for 5 or 4 minutes. Back to
we used to have. So you got to imagine the old school groups of people that were wandering around
Everyone
together,
go toot in the
trying
chat.
to figure out what this place was that we were going to call home, planet Earth. They all had very, very large trunks because the intestines were so large because of all this great giant bacterial organisms that were living inside there, so we could digest raw animals easily. But once we started cooking our food and once we started settling into a more sanitary lifestyles, then all of that energy that went into the gut bacteria had to go somewhere, and so it was sucked back into the body and went straight up to the brain. And luckily, the people that like you and me and Allan and I assume most people in the chat, the folks that we descended from, they were able to kind of make that transition period, where we didn't, we still get a decent amount of gut bacteria.
Are you saying I should cook my food or no cooking?
We should never go back to the way things were, because this was the problem that happened with Flounder, was that she was of a subsect or race of people that came before us that weren't able to make the transition from big giant bellies with giant like sea worm intestines to normal sized brain and regular sized intestines. Instead, her intestines were quite small, and as a result, all of that extra metabolism shot up through her upper spine, into her head, out the back, and then down the back.
That's so interesting.
And she got the vulva back there.
not putting I'm not putting a name on anything. I'm just saying all the details were back there.
And Robbie, where do the ice baths come into play here?
The ice baths were. We did the ice baths. We had ice baths. We had a story. What was the story?
Don't tell another story. Just finish this story. And when are you going to get to the roof of the world?
We're plowing through to the roof of the world, and the roof of the world. But first we have to find out what happened to Flounder, which is that she had been because she had moved into this town, and all they had were these big buckets and cisterns and not cisterns, but barrels and pots and various bottles that were just filled with all this crazy stuff that they had been drinking. So she started drinking the food that they had been eating because she was tired out because they had been working so hard to try and make a family.
And Robbie, I'm going to the vet tomorrow to get food for my cat that is for renal support.
Well, but all the cat's details are where you expect it, right?
Well, yeah. Actually, the doctor showed me an X-ray of my cat, and he showed me where my cat's shit was exactly in my cat. He said,
"Oh, we don't like the brown word on the show."
Oh, I'm so sorry. He said, "This is bleep, and this area here." This area here is farts, and this area here is more bleep. He really showed me exactly where it all was.
And there was a cat in the studio once. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan. Back to you, Kate. What a wonderful way to introduce Kate's a little bit of Kate's life into the EGI2 mythos.
Canon.
Not a canon. The canon. Yeah, thank you. We
lore
all
and
like
canon.
to overuse the word mythos. But the fact of the matter is that they had been trying to
1 minute and
have
20
a
seconds.
family, and that involved a lot of work for this crazy couple. You got to imagine if you were to come across the dedicated area on a night when things were feeling a little bit when the lights were nice, when the sun was coming down at the right angle, when the mists were coming in to create a mystique of of blocking off all the right parts of the body, of the beautiful human forms.
1 minute left. We're at 30%. We're not going to get to the next level. So finish the story and get to the moral.
So many more different kinds of human forms, and we don't have that no more, and that's a tragedy, I think. So we had these two very strange-looking people going at each other, trying to.
If I could just describe Flounder. Flounder looks exactly like Audrey Hepburn in those Breakfast at Tiffany posters, but just no hair.
Well, also no hair, and then instead of her bouffant going up, it goes back and flops down back.
15 seconds, 17 seconds. Finish the story. Finish the story.
Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. Look it up if you're a fan of the show.
10.
A lot of
10, 9. They're not giving any more money to this. You lost them.
I can't.
8, 5, 6, 7, 5, 4, 3.
Well, they didn't get to make it.
Well, just that's it. That's the end. Damn it. God damn it.
Well, it said hype train success.
That just means it's done.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying that we failed.
They're trying to sit. Yeah, they're trying to be nice.
We can't, obviously, because of the way that the show works, we can't give you the full story.
Just do the.
But I just want to say a couple things that I just let me get a couple of little facts out that I wasn't able to get to. First fact was that somebody came up on them while they were
Don't tell story.
I'm not telling the story out.
Oh,
I'm
man.
not. I'm just telling you, somebody came up on them and got jealous. But here's the thing, is that person wasn't from the village. And the second thing I'll say is that person knew how to build houses.
Okay.
So.
Sorry, I don't like that one.
Loud.
Yeah, sorry. Wait,
like Frank Lloyd Wright.
So happy to have everybody here. This is EGI2 Stream 11. Thank you for the hype train, and thank you for being supporters of the show and everything that we attempt to do, especially when it comes to telling the truth. And we are, in fact, always on the journey to tell the truth, to be truth tellers, to be seekers. I think is a better way I like to think of it as. Not so much as people that are didactic. We're not dogmatic people. No, we do have a few rules, especially about the brown word, and also keeping things family friendly as much as possible. Obviously, you can't open a kid's book these days, and when I say kids book, I mean like a kid's book that was written 400 or 500 years ago, and not see something quite unsettling. So the details that we talk about, the details, not in the way I was referring to them. I'm saying that there's necessary to get the truth out. To get the truth, sometimes
you have to break the rules to learn what the rules are. And
Yes.
I was using a medical term that my doctor used with me, and then I shared it on air on the show.
Shit.
And that word is pretty inflammatory word.
Well, it's not necessarily inflammatory. It's just that you have to have a space where the brown word is still taboo, and I think that is one of the things that we're known for here at EGI2. We're known for
It's a video game show.
Talking about video games that came out between 2002 and 2011 that mostly are forgettable. And then we do the video game awards shows whenever we feel like it, and then we do the funny video game news, and then we also don't say the brown word.
We never say shit.
Does Tamagotchi fall in that range of time?
Tamagotchis, I believe, came out in the late 90s, so not quite, but
Okay.
Occasionally, Tamagotchi, Donbachi?
Tamagotchi game.
What's the Donbachi?
Donbachi, that might be some
Donbachi.
food.
It sounds like maybe a food.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, the
Donbachi.
point is that this is EGI2, Stream 11, February 19th, 2024.
Because the brown word is a big part of Tamagotchi game.
Really?
Yeah, big part of that game. You have to flush away their brown words.
Robbie calls them logs in the lake.
Yeah, so we don't. No, we don't. No, the logs are not. The logs are just. Tamagotchi is a pun on Tamagotchi and Tamago from Craftmaster Zach. Wonderfully put there, Craftmaster Zach. I will say that the logs in the lake refer to not those. I don't want to say no. It's not a direct like that's a log. This is a log, and this is what we're doing. That's where that came from. No, the logs are blockages in a perfectly clear and pure lake that is what we can all drink from and make our supper with the water from the lake. And we want to keep the lake clean, and we don't want to put any logs in the lake. And the more logs are in the lake, then the water gets displaced, and then floods the nearby swamps. And then all of a sudden, they get half of the water from the lake, and then the lake gets half the water that it had once before. And then everywhere is a swamp, and then there ain't no lake no more.
That is very true.
Wow.
So let's talk to Kate. Is of course here with us tonight because there's a Final Fantasy VII game coming out, and Kate is a Final Fantasy, from what I understand, is a Final Fantasy expert. Kate, so tell us what we're looking for.
Complete and total expert. Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you, Kate, and back to you, Kate. Back to you, Allan, and back to you, EGI2. Twitch.tv/EGI_2 Stream 11.
Basically, Final Fantasy VII is an awesome game that came out in 1997 or thereabouts. And the awesomest thing about it is that it had a commercial on TV. And when I saw that, I sat up straight in my chair and I said, they're making commercials on TV for video games now? What the heck? Normally they just have commercials for other TV shows on TV. So I sat up straight in my chair when I saw this, and I thought I better play that game as soon as possible. And I played it with my friend Michonne, and Michonne was my friend, and she had a single mom, and they had a horse.
That was the guy's name.
Michonne. It's a French name.
Oh.
No, that was. But I'm saying like the house guy.
Oh.
That was his name.
Michonne.
Michonne.
And I played Final Fantasy VII, and I pretty much couldn't believe how much fun the game was. And the big problem with Final Fantasy VII is no one understands the story or what it's about.
That's great news, and such great and incredible analysis coming from somebody as clearly as learned as you on the Final Fantasy topic. And I would like you to consider the year that Final Fantasy VII came out, and what what was going on in your life that year besides just sitting down and watching TV with Marchand? And it was
Michonne. We would watch Supermarket Sweep together.
Supermarket Sweep, a classic show. Could be a game.
Yeah, it was a game show.
This is a game show.
This is a video game news and culture and reviews show specifically for 2002 to 2011, except for all of the other years that we talk about occasionally.
Okay, someone in the chat said Sephiroth. Exactly.
So yeah, so Sephiroth is in the chat. So if we can get if Sephiroth is a mod, maybe he could throw up a poll and we could see all of you could see what people were watching in 1997. You said?
I think 1997. Don't quote me on that.
All right,
but
so
somebody Google it, please.
Thanks Sephiroth. Thanks for all the subs. Thanks for all the.
They're making it. They remade the game.
They have remade Final Fantasy VII, and I keep putting my microphone up like this because I'm getting so excited. I gotta push it down the microphone.
You just hold it right up to your mouth.
Hold it wherever you want. Honestly, there's no rules except for the rules that we went through, and also some that we didn't go through.
So here's the thing. Sephiroth is a big character from Final Fantasy VII. He's sort of a big, evil leather daddy, gay guy, kinda. And everyone loves a mean gay guy, and he kind of is like Truman Capote in The Swans, where he's just kind of like dropping these like insults, and everyone can't believe it.
And Truman Capote with The Swans is of course a walking simulator that you can purchase right now on Steam for the low price of $7.99.
Yes, and they're remaking Final Fantasy VII now for people like me, who now I'm an adult and I'm kind of in charge. And so the culture wants to please me. What can you do? Remake my favorite game so I can kind of remember what it was like to be young and not to be like worried about things that I'm worried about, like renal failure, like my cat going into renal failure. When I play Final Fantasy VII Remake, my cat is not in early stage renal failure. I am Cloud Strife, and I am in Midgar, and I'm saving the world. And the game is about climate change, so that's important too.
And it's terrible that Cloud was going through all of that with the early renal failure when he was escaping City 17. And what's the poll? We have a poll up there in the chat. What's people are watching in 1997, and I think that most people will agree on what we were watching in 1997, which is the FF7 commercials. That's great news.
Yes!
A lot of people were watching it.
Yes!
67% for the FF7 commercial. Just Shoot Me is gaining ground, which I'm pretty sure is a light gun game for the PlayStation, which
Just Shoot Me
started
it was like a TV show. It was like a funny sitcom.
No, it was the guys, the little guys with the mustaches, and they were dressed up like explorers, like Victorian explorers, and that was Just Shoot Me. And you could get and if you got the light gun for Time Crisis or Time Crisis 2 or Time Crisis 3, you could also play Point Blank with it, but you could also play.
No, David Spade was in it.
Someone asked what my cat's name is. His name is Manny. Manny, Manny. He's 14.
Just Shoot Me. That's the guy. Those are the guys from the game.
Oh my God, I love those guys.
And everyone. What was so unfortunate was that the car accident that killed Gunpei Yokoi around this time. He was of course the guy who created the Game Boy and the Virtual Boy, but also is responsible for the Metroid series.
And many of you might not know this, but Metroid was based on the woman Flounder. Metroid is actually Samus, a gorgeous woman, but Samus has beautiful blonde hair.
That's true. Well, in some tellings, Samus has red hair, I believe.
Oh, you might be completely right. Well, in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, she's got beautiful blonde hair.
Well, if you cut the hair up, what I would love to see then is if someone could find Samus, cut that hair off, and see what's underneath. If it's one of those, if there's one of those brain lobes, then we might have what I would call the missing link to not between current gaming and, of course, the past. When people lived in folktales, Allan. Miracles were happening on a regular basis. It was the time of magic and miracles and prophets, and occasionally, every once in a while, just a giant naked woman would wander into your town, and she had a brain that went down her back.
Wow.
almost like a blunted, you know what it reminds me of, Allan, is those little dogs that have the funny flat tails. And they live in the water, and they
Dalmatian.
No, they live in the water.
They live in the water, and they've got funny flat tails, and they putter around, and they're always chewing on grass.
Shiba Inu.
I think he's talking about fish.
And they've got hard mouths.
Yeah, this is fish. Fish have hard mouths, and they live in the water.
And they putter around.
Yeah. Oh, seal.
Oh, platypus.
Mossy lump. Oh,
so have you ever seen a platypus? That's kind of like that's what the platypus's tail looks like. That's like if you took that tail off the platypus and lend it to you, gently now. We don't want to.
Robbie, I was looking at my phone. What the hell are you talking about?
I just want to say that we don't want to do any more harm to the earth than we already have. So if you took the platypus tail gently and it gave it to you with permission, and you put your mouth up to it and it blew up, and then that would be like where the brain would go.
Yes, and we don't want to do any more harm to the earth, and that is one of the main themes of Final Fantasy VII.
And that is why it is so important that we have Kate here tonight to bring us back to that center. That's the every
show.
Every story has a beginning and a middle and an end. Someone says, and
there's a lot of Final Fantasy games, Robbie.
Kate is sort of like the middle, but Kate is kind of like the middle, but she's also the grounding. She's also the ground level. So somehow, because the ground is where the gravity pulls you to the ground, right?
Yes.
And that's how gravity works in real life. But with stories, narratives are inward focused towards the center point. So if you think of it like a radial kind of a graph. Like a radial graph with a circle in the center and all these arrows pointing in.
You're describing a pie chart?
It's like beginning, middle, beginning 1, beginning 2, beginning 3, beginning 4, blah, 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 blah. And it all goes around the middle. And everything points back at the middle, including the end.
I know what it's like. It's exactly like the Shinra building, which is a big building in Final Fantasy VII, where you start at the bottom, and there's a whole part of the game where the whole part of the game you're going up to the top of the building. That's what that's like.
Exactly, but eventually you go back down to the middle of the building, and then because all the elevators have to stop there.
Yeah, that's true.
Is this what Sephiroth looks like?
He's really looks like that, except his hair's long and white, but he looks really like that.
Long and white hair, of course, is evolutionary.
Yes.
Is evolutionary. It's said that if you have long white hair, that you came from a very different.
Here's another fact about Final Fantasy VII. I was at a wedding a few years ago, actually quite a while ago now. Jeez. This was when they announced they were remaking Final Fantasy VII. And I was speaking to a young man, maybe 10 or 11. And we were a child. And I was speaking to him about video games. And I was like, I'm so excited. They just announced they're remaking Final Fantasy VII. And this young child said, yeah, everyone my age is pretty upset because that game's boring and it's kind of for old people. And we don't understand why they're remaking it. None of us are going to play it.
But do they like it now that they saw that it's cool?
I lost touch with that child pretty much the next day.
Well, luckily for that child and for you and for everybody else who's become old and boring and out of touch, we have a different. I
have a surprise for Kate. You know what this is?
Oh, I know what that is, Allan. I know
it's a cutting board.
That is a cutting board.
This is actually Kate's cutting board. Here you go.
That's my cutting board.
So a little backstory. The reason Kate is on the show is I met Kate at a bakery.
I'm a baker.
She's a baker, and she was baking these incredible cakes. And I was in need of a baker for a cake project I was doing. So Kate and I worked together on this incredible cake project.
We collaborated.
It was a collaboration. Kate made these wonderful cakes for this project, and I actually have it. Maybe we can watch it. But long story short, Kate, I accidentally took Kate's cutting board during the project, and I forgot to give it back to Kate. And Kate, during the collaboration, Kate mentioned Final Fantasy quite a number of times, and I said, that's a video game. Rob, you should meet my friend Robbie. Robbie loves video games. So I said, come on to EGI2, and maybe you could talk about this video game, Final Fantasy VII. But that's, long story short, maybe we could show our collaboration, if that's okay with you, Robbie.
Do we have permission to watch it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the collaboration that Kate and I made. Let's make sure the sound is up on that and the sound is off on us.
I really love to step on soggy, floppy things with my sexy, nice feet. I will only step on the best stuff. Perfect little things that squish and drip just for me. Sometimes my little feeties get so hungry. I have to feed them or they will ache and scream. I spend all my money on the yummiest treats to feed my feet. They are so greedy, they gobble everything up until they are full and juicy. Juicy. They don't even leave me a crumb. I tried to punish them, but they called the police and I got in trouble. I don't know what to do. My body is wasting away while my bad little feet grow bigger and bigger. Bigger and bigger. I've given them everything I have, and now the only thing that's left of me is feet. I'm feet. Feet. I'm just feet now. I'm only my feet.
Yay! 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 Thank you so much, Kate. That was such a fruitful collaboration. It was so fun to work with you. Back to you, Rob.
That was such a special cottagecore moment for us.
Back to you.
Robbie, do you like my art?
Well, what I can't help but think about you talk about collaborations, of course. If we could just focus on collaborations for a second, it reminds me of tonight's a game that we'll be talking about this evening quite a bit. A collaboration, of course, that takes place between former ex-Navy SEAL John Mayer and his co-pilot Mookie.
The singer, John Mayer?
No, just a different. He's an ex-Navy SEAL turned emergency rescue service operated John Mayer and his co-pilot Mookie, who collaborated together to reach the Big Table Research Station at the bottom of the ocean to dispense with a number of issues that had cropped up in the middle of a grand experiment that people were using to.
John Mayer,
the ex-Navy SEAL and operative turned emergency rescue services ex-Navy SEAL. So the SEALs are not operatives; they're just SEALs.
And he was a singer after
and he was,
this,
and
or
he
before?
Never became. Well, I guess
is this a new thing?
the thing is that this is we're referring to, of course, is the game Deep Fear from 1997 for the Sega Saturn, and Deep Fear had, of course, John Mayer having perhaps survived, and we don't know that for sure if he survived the big table calamity, that he would have restored his surface level. He got back to the top of the ocean and got to the air and the land and stayed there, and then used all the extra lung capacity that he had grown from rationing his oxygen, which you do throughout the game, to become a better singer.
And Robbie, you know how people do that thing where they say, McDonald's girlfriend, Burger King boyfriend? You're Sega host and I'm PlayStation guest. Because you're a Sega man.
Well, I like to think that, of course, Sega is playing with Sega Genesis, CD, 32X, Saturn, etc. How I got into this whole situation as a result of being a child of divorce. And so I do believe that divorce is a powerful thing that can happen in a developmentally sensitive time for a child.
And
my parents are still together.
Does divorce make a parent buy their child kind of the third tier video game system?
Oh, I would say a third tier system would be.
Yeah, it goes Nintendo, PlayStation, Sega. That's how it goes.
The PlayStation hadn't even been out when my parents got divorced.
Nintendo wasn't out?
Nintendo was out, but Nintendo had dropped the ball with Mortal Kombat, and so there wasn't a choice for me. If I wanted to if I wanted to rip and tear and be violent and do crazy stuff, then I needed to buy a Sega Genesis because of the fatalities and the blood code, ABACABB. We all know that by heart because of the importance it had to the culture. So if we could we want to talk about Deep Fear tonight because it's an important game. It's an important game when you're talking because when you talk about the history of Final Fantasy, one of the things that pops out to you is, of course, the storytelling, the cinematics. But to me, you can't have the refinement to that type of storytelling without having first learnt your lessons.
Steely Dan just subscribed and said, my parents got divorced when I had a 32X. Let's go!
I got the 32X after they got divorced, but I know how that feels to get the 32X with Cosmic Carnage, Doom 32X, which is a surprisingly good port. I think it's still maintained. You could say it's better than some of the Jaguar port, or even perhaps the Sega Saturn port that came out a few years later. People had some issues with that there. And of course, the third game for the 32X that would come out is Metalhead. So let's take a quick look at EGI2's, this is not quite a retrospective, but a deep dive into Eternal Dark, Deep Fear for the PlayStation, for the Sega Saturn.
I'm not mad. More importantly, Mookie, how's the little shark?
Best conditions. Like the Yankees in '96. Why? What's up?
An accident in the Navy area. We're the first to go in. Hey, this is no joke, Moogie. You've got an important job to do. I'll fill you in later. You found Anthony.
Yes. Are we clear from the meltdown danger?
Yes.
I lowered the mic.
I couldn't save everyone.
I think you're doing wonderful, John. Don't get down on yourself.
Oh, we're all together.
Anthony is in a bad mood, so I'm going to head back to the ERS room.
Okay, Gina. Thanks.
You're welcome. I forgot to tell you. The monsters. About the parasite cells.
Yeah. How much longer will the base last?
First look at Deep Fear for the Sega Saturn, of course, introducing ourselves to some of the main characters, most specifically Mookie and John Mayer, the ex-Navy SEAL turned
singer-songwriter.
We still don't know the connection there, but we must assume the best because as a Navy SEAL, you get trained at the highest level, and they don't just train you to be killers, incredibly incredibly efficient killers, but they also train you to be warrior poets, I think is the term that is used
Robbie,
and thrown about.
Have you ever seen that movie with Matthew Broderick where they're training chimpanzees how to fly planes?
I've never seen any movies with any actors or that I can remember their names.
There's a movie with Matthew Broderick where they're training monkeys how to fly planes, and let's just say the ending is extremely sad. I think everyone listening to me should watch that movie.
Because the monkeys take over. And they build a whole
society. I don't want to. I'm gonna watch it.
Project X. That is
okay,
right.
so,
Yup-dum boo-bum.
I've got to say that it's inspiring to hear the story of the monkeys learning how to fly planes and taking the Earth back, and maybe they'll have a better chance. They'll have a better chance because of their connections to the nature, that they'll be able to treat it better than we did.
Monkeys should be allowed in the military, in every country's military, but they should be consenting to everything that happens.
And that is the kind of expertise that we expect from a guest host like Kate O'Connor, brought here tonight to speak about not only the Final Fantasy series and how it has affected her lives and also the gaming culture as a whole, but also to espouse various beliefs about the prescience and the ability of our primate relatives to come up with their own sets of laws and politics, and to transcend the breakaway subspecies that we became, except for all of the other all the weirder like the ones that I was talking about before when it came to the Roof of the World story, Allan.
I just think it's so interesting that on the eve of the release of Final Fantasy Rebirth, which is likely to be one of the biggest video games of the year, we have a Final Fantasy VII expert, Kate O'Connor, here. But I think it's very interesting that Robbie's chose to talk about Deep Fear. Back to you, Robbie.
Well, because there's been a lot of talk about Deep Fear lately, because people want to see more about they understand that Deep Fear was a game that came out in Japan, it came out in the UK, and I believe in Europe, but never came out in North America. And I think that's most people banging and transmitting their thoughts to the right people, that perhaps somewhere there is, because we know that there was almost the code for the game exists, the finished version of the game exists, it just wasn't burned to discs and sent to the factory and into our hands.
Damn.
Not okay.
So people are finding out about this. They're running out into the street. They're pulling people out of their cars, rattling their heads, and demanding more Deep Fear news. And that's what we're doing here tonight, because I think, like I said before, you can't have Final Fantasy VII Remake if you don't know your history about the Deep Fear. If you don't know your Deep Fear history, then you can't go into Final Fantasy VII Remake, Advent, Children, Rising, Air Guys.
Yeah, and listen.
And
listen,
we've
talked a lot about women's bodies on this program tonight, and that's not going to stop now. There's a character in Final Fantasy VII whose name is Tifa Lockhart, and I don't know, let me know if I'm saying a bad word, but she has big breasts. And some people are saying, oh, she doesn't look real, this isn't realistic, she's got too big of breasts. Well, guess who grew big breasts the second puberty hit? Me.
The second puberty.
And this was
first puberty was normal, and then second puberty hit was crazy.
I'm talking increments of time.
And Kate, I do have a question for you.
Yes, Allan.
You were a child, you played these Final Fantasy games.
Yes.
The character of Tifa came on, you experienced the character of Tifa, and then you grew breasts.
Yeah, that's pretty much right.
So, what's interesting to me about what you just said about about having second puberty is that one of the issues the woman in the story, Flounder, also came from a subspecies of human, a human family. We're all part of the human family, but we're also different, and we had different. And before, we used to be a lot more different, and some different groups of people had second puberties.
Yeah, and pretty much everyone throughout history goes, oh, big breasts are fake news. No video game characters have big breasts. They don't exist in real life. and everyone said, "Oh, make Lara Croft's breasts smaller." And guess what? Those people got what they wanted. And me and the rest of women around who have big breasts, we go, "Oh, I guess no one believes we exist." And now Lara Croft's breasts are small, and Tifa's breasts are probably next.
Damn. That's terrible.
Allan, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I salute Kate for being a rare voice in video games who thinks that female video game characters should have larger breasts.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. Because everyone says, "Oh, big breasts are sexy and small breasts are not." Guess what? That's not true. Sometimes breasts are sexy, and sometimes they can just all be different sizes.
Well, nothing sexier, in my opinion, than Sega Saturn survival horror game. 2 discs. It took 2 discs to cram all of the horror and the surviving into the Deep Fear discs. So they had one. They sort of like second puberty. They got to puberty on the first disc, and then second puberty, they said we haven't grown enough. And and when I say growing, I mean the story and the characters and the horror and the surviving. So they had to have second puberty on the second disc.
And men, just be lucky that no one has to. Just be lucky you're able to hide your balls or whatever, so no one can say, "Oh, big balls don't exist." You guys don't have to deal with that conversation. You're lucky.
Thank you for speaking up and saying that. No one ever said that.
No one has ever said that
no
live here on EGI, twitch.tv/EGI_2 stream 11. So let's take since we are talking, we're talking about, you said the word, and I won't say the word again, but the part that you need that part to make the other one work, to do the other, to make that one work too.
You need breasts to make balls work.
So what I was trying to say is that what that reminds me of is buoys, and of course buoys are a big part of what make the underwater segments of Deep Fear so interesting.
Well, hold on, we got a comment here. We got a comment here. I'm just going to read it. This is a highlighted comment from EGI2 watcher. It said, "My sister had huge breasts in high school, and she won the tourneys MVP in her junior year, and she blew out her knee. I'm so sorry. In her senior year, but I didn't know if that was because of the breasts. She played a year at URI. I don't know what that means, but thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
That's very nice.
Thank you.
Now we're back to you, Robbie.
So let's take a quick look at another. We're diving deep into the story of Deep Rising.
Deep Rising.
Deep Fear. So let's hit that nail on the head, and let's drive the nail into the wood, to the point where the wood is splintering, and all the bits of the wood that are particles are flying into the air. If we can watch that second video, Deep Fear, nail, wood, particles.
Danny, you're still around, Johnny boy.
I'll go with Danny to the Naviary and wait for help. Go ahead. I'll protect you.
Okay.
I've had it with him. He bit me, and he's a troublemaker. Go over to your owner. Okay, I'll push the button in the control room.
In the depths of the Pacific Ocean lies the big table. In the depths of the Pacific, this is the story of the Deep Fear. Because people have gotten a taste. They've gotten first taste, second taste, first puberty, second puberty, towards the deep puberty. In the same way that we were talking about how stories move radially towards the middle,
Robbie, do you think if I ate more raw meat, I would hit second puberty sooner?
Yes.
In the depths of the Pacific Ocean lies the Big Table, a colossal underwater research facility teeming with scientific advancements and terrible secrets. John Mayer, a seasoned ex-Navy SEAL turned emergency rescue service operative, arrives for his first assignment. Unfortunately, this might also be his last. John and his co-pilot, Mookie, investigate a recovered space capsule, hoping to retrieve its secrets. But instead of normal answers, they find the worst kind of answers. The kind that is nuts. And that's not all. Alien parasites with the power to warp human biology, chilling mutations, twisting the facility's crew into monstrous hybrids. As John, Mookie, and a bunch of friends... Mookie and a bunch of friends navigate the Big Table's corridors, elevators, and tubes, and pipes.
What are you reading?
They must fight like crazy because the creatures are getting worse by the minute. Resources are scarce, the truth is nuts, and no one is happy.
Is this a special?
Especially not John.
Is this a special report?
This is the story of Deep Fear, and this is the reason that we're all here tonight.
I thought we were talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. 7.
This is in a way that we talked about collaboration with the dirty the porno that you showed earlier.
That was not pornography.
That was this is a collaboration. The story of Deep Fear is a collaboration between the characters and the players.
That video wasn't pornography. That video was kind of great American baking. Great American baking.
Yes, it was an artistic.
Well,
artistic
they say about
expression through cakes
they said it about Maplethorpe, and they'll say it about this. I think as well. You know it when you see it, and I know it when I see it, and I don't need
Robbie, the interesting thing about Deep Fear is there's a chimpanzee in it, and in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake, you get to interact with chocobos, which is sort of a horse. It's a creature that's a horse / ostrich, and different chocobos have different powers. Like the blue chocobo can walk on water, and like the green chocobo is fast. And so that's interesting. That's an interesting connection there.
So the interesting connection, I think, is also what you were saying about the chimpanzees and of course the ones that also pilot airplanes. And perhaps in some ways this could be a prequel, if you will, in terms of the development of chimpanzees or other ape-like organisms becoming so self-aware that they can, in fact, learn from Matthew Broderick's and take to the skies and beyond. But that reminds me that we have a third video for Deep Fear that we need to show. So let's take a look at we're going deep into the fear right now here on twitch.tv/EGI_2.
Wait. I don't trust Clancy. Did you know that he sank a passenger ship on purpose?
He said it was an accident.
That was no accident. The sonar person warned him that a civilian ship was approaching.
You seem to know a lot.
Of course, I was the sonar person. That's why I can't trust him. People trying to get to Washington tried to cover it up, but it was found out in an internal check and taken to court-martial. That's why he was sent here. He's the type who will kill a man for his career.
Anyway, get ready to escape.
Already there. Just have to move to the Navy area.
There are a lot of creatures over there. How do you get to the energy unit area?
There are a lot of different ways. Sharon knows that area well. Try going to the sea farm. Leave the area lock up to me, is what I'd like to say, but this is out of gas.
Okay, Mookie, let's slide on into home.
Hurry up and get out, Mookie.
So in that last clip, we also learned that Mookie, as not only for being a spectacular collaborator with John Mayer, also refers to himself as Mookie.
There's Tifa. Tifa.
Robbie, remember when we went to E3?
So somebody in the chat is noticing that Deep Fear has been covered previously on our previous EGI.
And that's Allan as Tingle. Allan, are you Tingle?
Yes,
there?
yes.
So Electronic Game Information on AdultSwim.com did previously cover Deep Fear, but because this is a different show, we are covering, and because we have new information to share with you, then we are going to be also repairing that.
What's the new information?
The new information is going to come up when we get to the new information, but we have to get through the current information first, and to explore the relationships between the characters, between this gem, I would say a hidden gem of a Sega Saturn game that not a lot of people even knew existed. And then we have to show the fourth video.
Mookie likes baseball.
Mookie refers to himself as Mookie.
Mookie.
He's got to slide into home. In the same way that we'll be sliding into video number 4.
Is someone there?
Who are you?
John Mayer, ERS.
Can't get away from you. It's me, McCoy.
Colonel McCoy?
Stay where you are. Listen from there. The time I have left is short.
No.
Yes. My body is being taken over by a creature. I can't remember. I was called Iron Fist. I'm reaching my end. John, there's something I want to tell you.
What?
About Stella. At the time of the accident, you probably tried all you could to save her.
Yes.
These 3 years, I needed to talk to you, but if I did, I would blame myself for letting you and Stella go.
Colonel McCoy.
Don't come any closer. I don't want you to see me like this. I always thought of you as a brother. I wanted to give this to you after you and Stella got married. It's a Colt, M1991A1. It's from my father's generation. The pride of a strong America. I wanted to give you this.
Colonel McCoy.
Okay, go. Iron Fist is gonna take his last shot.
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna blow this place. Get out of here. John, kill a creature for me.
That was wild, Robbie.
That is the kind of storytelling that you simply just don't see anymore when it comes to these big budget, bloated, fancy projects that I think have no staying power in the way that Deep Fear has stayed with us for this long, despite us not even knowing it was there. It's sort of like when you go to like a park or a beach somewhere that has like all those little spiky little bean that like a trap gets into your socks. That's how Deep Fear has lasted. That's how the lasting ephemeral. That's how the lasting legacy of Deep Fear has made it this far.
If I was dying, Robbie, I would gift you a gun.
I'm being turned into a creature.
And here's the thing here's the thing about that gun, and this is not to spoil anything or to try to encourage any kind of behaviors, but that was the kind of gun that they had in Poppersville.
I knew
Village.
it.
Oh,
I knew it.
right. Yeah, Popper. Popper.
Anyway,
that scene reminded me of when I go to Six Flags and I go to Fright Fest at Halloween.
Kate, what are your thoughts about these mutations on the? And of course, this is different than the kind of mutations that you see in a Resident Evil game, whereas those mutations take place in houses and basements and city streets. This takes place on an underwater research station, a colossal underwater research facility teeming with scientific advancements and terrible secrets.
Yeah, that's the huge difference between Deep Fear and Resident Evil. Resident Evil, it takes place in sort of a secluded mansion, and Deep Fear is taking place underwater, kind of like The Abyss. James Cameron's The Abyss. This is sort of like The Abyss times Resident Evil. You get Deep Fear.
James Cameron, of course, is the maker of Boom Blocks on the Nintendo Wii. So if you're a big fan of Boom Blocks, you have James Cameron to thank, and all of the other games that he has produced over the years.
Steven Spielberg made Boom Blocks.
So unfortunately, we have to turn to the more upsetting elements of the story of Deep Fear, which is the fact of the matter is that the parasite is out there. It's attached to people's DNA, and it's turning them against themselves in the way that we saw Iron Fist McCoy had to have to tame himself and tame the unfortunate elements of transformation from person to monster to protect his dear friend.
Yeah, but in Resident Evil, every time they transform, they're like, this is good that this is happening. I'm actually getting better.
Well, let's go to the phones and see what people are saying about Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn. People are as excited about it as I am, and as I assume, and as excited about Kate as being here to share her knowledge about Final Fantasy VII and of course her analysis. Because it's sort of like when they invite
James Carville
to discuss Deep Fear.
Oh yeah.
So James Carville, being the expert in American politics at the turn of the 21st century, but obviously with that the amount of reading that one has to do to get good at that, you can't imagine that he flipped through the magazine enough times with enough magazines that he wouldn't have known about Deep Fear at the point where you invite him to the show.
Everybody was talking about it.
Oh. Joe Botnick is on the show. Joe Botnick is loud as can be in the studio, but we've got him down to the right volume. Joe Botnick, what are your thoughts?
Hello, hi Robbie, hi Allan, hi Kate.
Kate O'Connor, Final Fantasy expert, Kate O'Connor,
friend of the show.
I just want to say it's really nice having a Final Fantasy expert on the show finally.
Finally, after all this time.
It's really
exactly,
cool.
And what better time to have a Final Fantasy expert on the show than when we're talking about Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn for 90 minutes.
Absolutely, and one thing I wanted to bring up about this whole situation was how women have this second puberty that I'd never heard about that before, and I think that men don't get that second puberty, and maybe that's why everything, I don't know, stayed so, nothing grew.
They're trying to keep that information away from you, Joe Botnick, because if you know that, then you'd have more empathy for women, and then they couldn't play their little fucked up head games between us.
That's right.
Not to speak of any other genders that are being left out of their information is getting left out too.
And perhaps if the male-dominated development team of Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn had gone through a second puberty and had their metabolisms properly aligned then they could have figured out how to put Deep Fear onto one disc as opposed to two.
Yeah, they just needed that extra, dump of hormones, and they could have figured stuff out.
Well, we don't know if it's hormones yet, do we, Joe Botnick? I mean, we talk a big game, like because we recognize that the possibility is there that a person can go through second puberty, despite having apparently our particular subspecies of human being having evolved past that. Apparently, we're still sometimes going through it in the same way. Some people still grow tails, don't they, Joe Botnick?
They do indeed, and I feel like in video games you see quite a few betailed gentlemen, but you don't see a lot of scantily clad men, where the things that should be hidden are accentuated, like you do with women, which I think is another huge difference and another injustice that has yet to be corrected.
And Allan will, I think Allan will have something to say about this, but the thing that I wanted to say about John Mayer, the ex-Navy SEAL turned emergency rescue service operative, is that instead of taking off his clothes as the game progresses and as we get more comfortable with his journey, instead of taking off his clothes and showing more of his body, which is fine, and we should see that, because I do think that the human body is a noteworthy accomplishment that should be celebrated and elevated. I also think, but instead we put him into diving suits and exoskeletons.
Right.
And what purpose does that serve?
And speaking of women's bodies, if I hold my hands like this, it kind of looks like one of those AI pictures where the computer can't make the hands look real.
Allan, is that right?
I don't know about that.
Look at my hands. It kind of looks like, when I hold them like this, it kind of looks like one of those AI pictures.
Oh, yeah. May I interrupt?
Like,
my hands look pretty normal.
Well, we're talking about women's bodies, so maybe just my body.
We're talking about John Mayer's body now, because we are talking about Deep Fear, and you can't talk about Deep Fear without talking about John Mayer's body.
And can I interrupt with a comment from a viewer?
Absolutely.
This is from Visk. They say.
Oh, we know Visk.
Visk at Allan Resnick. I can't call tonight, but I would kindly ask Robbie. Could you ask Robbie for me if he thinks Deep Fear also inspired the game Carrier on the Dreamcast? Back to you, Robbie.
I do think that Deep Fear caller. I think that Deep Fear not only describes Carrier, I mean inspired Carrier, but also inspired its non-released sequel Carrier 2, as well as the second Deep Fear game, which was supposedly in development at a fairly early but still beyond just simple planning stage of development, as well as the Blue Stingers. Joe Botnick?
Robbie, can I ask John? Is it John Mayer? Because
it's spelled M-A-Y-O-R, as in the mayor of a town, mayor of a city or a town, the executive branch.
You probably know this, but there was an ex-prime minister of the United Kingdom called John Major, and I'm finding
John
this very
Major, of course,
confusing.
the great defenestrator of Margaret Thatcher.
That is what they call him,
and I'm wondering if maybe people would walk down. They would be walking. Everybody walking on the Thames River at Christmas time, and John Major would come with those wild look in his eyes, and they would step away from the railings that line the river there, because he would just be tossing everyone into the river. He'd be defenestrating all over the place.
He was a terror, and I wonder if maybe this is why Deep Fear wasn't like a huge hit in the United Kingdom, because everyone was so scared of John Major.
What you're saying to me, Joe Botnick, and this is what I'm hearing, is that you believe that they changed it was John Major that they changed the name from for the UK release, because they didn't want to freak people out, because they didn't want people thinking that they were about to give this man any more money than they already had.
I think it's really plausible, yeah.
This is why this stream is good, because we need to be talking more about what women are going through, and we need to be talking more about what English people are going through, because there's a lot of holes in everybody's experiences, and I don't know nothing about John Major. John Major
was an ex-Navy SEAL turned emergency rescue service operative who arrives on the big table for his first assignment, and it may be his last. Joe Botnick, thank you for your call. We have another call on the line.
Thank you, Joe Botnick.
You had that song about
we have that song about John Major.
Yeah, he had a song about a beautiful body.
He was the leader of the Conservatives Party, and he had to sing. Everybody has to sing a song. It's always Rule Britannia or Jingle Bells or whatever they sing in the UK these days.
I never knew English people were going through it like that.
Caller, you're on the air with EGI2 stream number 11. We're talking about Deep Fear. Who are you? Where are you calling from? And what are your thoughts on this classic? It is a classic.
Absolutely.
Classic classic Sega Saturn.
Doesn't even need to be said.
Deep Fear game.
Well, back to you, Allan, and back to you, Robbie,
Scott
and back to you,
Scott
Kate.
from the pit is on the horn now with his thoughts from the pit.
Friend of the show, friend of the chat. It's Scott from Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Pitt is because and the reason that we say this, and we've had to say this a couple of times, is because the pit is what they call Pittsburgh in the Fallout games.
Okay.
So, Scout from the pit, what are your thoughts on Deep Fear for the Sega Saturn?
Well, back to you, Robbie. You know, one thought that I actually had about the game is I appreciate the name of the game being Deep Fear.
Well, it's just Deep Fear. Being Deep Fear is a different game that came out on the. I don't know. Forget I said that. That wasn't good.
Well, you know, the reason I appreciate it is it relates back to when we were talking about hydrophobia and how a lot of people's confusion, you know, of the game hydrophobia and thinking it would be a safe place where they could go with a fear of water. Deep Fear is a place where I would not feel. So, you know, I would think to myself, Deep Fear, there's one of my fears is the fear of the water. There's definitely going to be a lot of water in this game.
Absolutely.
And I would know to stay away. So I appreciate the naming.
And back to you, Scott from the pit, but and back to you, Allan and Kate. But we have to talk about where would you rather be stuck? Would you rather be stuck on a ship that has gone completely off the rails in hydrophobia, where you're being hunted down by techno-terrorists with realistic water physics and bloom lighting, or would you be preferred to be stuck at the bottom of the ocean floor waiting for Mookie to finish fixing the submersible so that everyone can get the heck out of there?
I'd much rather be at the top of the ocean than the bottom of the ocean, but you know, both options.
Well, they're all
in some ways. I can agree with you on that.
In some ways, I agree with what Kate's saying as well, Scott. But I have to say, it's the difference between being lashed by a great whip, or being smothered by a large mass of skin. The ocean, when you get to that depth, it's less like a liquid and it's more like a solid skin that's just crushing and smothering you.
And back to you, Robbie. Are we talking more of like an oil skin on?
No, more of just like a kind of slightly too hairy kind of skin, because all the fish are hair. The skin is the ocean when it gets to that depth, when the pressure is that high.
What did you say about the fish?
The fish are like little hairs on the skin.
Fish are fingernails.
The fish are the hairs. The fingernails are the sharks, and the hands and feet are whales.
Back to you, Robbie. I actually had a little bit of breaking news for you. If you could believe it or not, as you know, and as Allan knows, and the rest of the chat knows, I'm not much of a gamer. But Kate, you might not know that about me, but I'm so happy to be able to call in and share. This makes me have such a bond with everybody here, the chat, with you, Robbie, with Allan, with Kate. So I also, you don't know this about me, Robbie, but I also am a child of divorce, of multiple divorce, and not on my mother's first divorce, but on her second divorce, she moved in with yet another man. And this man, one of his sons, had a PlayStation. And on that PlayStation, they did have Final Fantasy VII. And being a child of a divorce,
second divorce,
I dove into, much like a second puberty, a second divorce. And I dove into Final Fantasy VII. And I have a deep appreciation for the graphics of that game, of like when you would fight a big character and would like blast into the sky to do these crazy maneuvers to kill these characters, that and the first Resident Evil distracted me a lot of my time from that divorce of a divorce, a remastered divorce, if you will.
Sort of a double divorce, double divorce, double discs. And of course the double. We didn't get to talk about the doubles, the others in the story before, but that gives me, Scott. You've given us a great deal to think about as a child of divorce. From one child of divorce to another, I grant you a release of guilt because of course the divorce was not because of you. Mommy and Daddy love you dearly, and they always will love you the same way as they were when they're married, but they just live in different houses. So thank you for your call, Scott from Pittsburgh. We have another.
Robbie, I appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good night.
You're always appreciated, and everyone is deserving of love. And we have.
Thank you for sharing.
We have one more call that we're going to get to.
And let's get Kate some water. She needs to hydrate.
Oh, she needs to hydrate.
Water,
so
please.
we do have a water cooler here, Kate. If you wanted to drink water, you're allowed to.
I'll get my water.
Thank you all. I love you all, and good night.
Thank you. Good night, Scott from Pittsburgh.
One
last call before we go to the next segment. It's over. It's the button. No calls.
I love water.
Caller, you're on the air with EGI2, Stream 11. Child of divorce or not?
Not yet.
So a happy childhood, of course, means a childhood of adventure and thoughtfulness, and of course, a kind of a Narnia type of situation, I imagine.
Yeah, kind of a coming of age story. But without sort of the fairy tale adventure aspects, or maybe some of the more fanciful aspects you might see in story time. Pretty much just normal life.
Just normal life.
Without any of those.
You know, when you're the child of divorce and you see a game called Splatterhouse 3 staring at you from the shelf in your local gaming store, you're not looking for Kirby's sticker star Super 6 sticker star.
They should have had a game called The Divorce Adventure.
And they should have a game called A Divorce Adventure.
And that would have been a game for children of divorce, where they could have kind of confronted sort of the things they needed to confront and dealt with what they needed to deal with.
So
like some kind of Life is Strange kind of coming of age, choose your own adventure sort of thing, but it's mostly just about divorce.
So
I can see that.
Kate, obviously, having the last name O'Connor makes me think of the Irish O'Connors.
Yes.
And of course the Papals and the Papists and how they view marriage and fidelity, and how does that work for you, and how does it relate to Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn?
Well, pretty much my parents were together. They never got divorced. My dad did pass away, and that's okay. We all die. And my parents had a pretty happy marriage, but I will say that my aunts and uncles, I have pretty much no divorce in my family. But I'll tell you what I did have. I had some aunts and uncles who basically someone slept on the couch permanently. You know, it was kind of a Catholic thing of like, it's better to sleep on the couch and drink a bottle of wine every single night. That's much better than get divorced and maybe try to be happy.
No, but it's also possible when you say that instead of sleeping on the couch because the marriage was unhappy, they were simply trying to get through survival horror games like Deep Fear, Carrier, and Cold Fear on the Xbox.
Well, I just think that maybe the adults in my life, maybe alcohol was the number one love, and that's sort of like everything trickled down from there.
And that's what and I don't call it this, but some do. They say it's the Irish curse, and I suppose that might be what you're referring to.
Well, I can't speak to that, I'm afraid. Hey, Robbie, this is Gio.
Hey, it's Gio. What's the good news from Geonosis?
Gio from Dallas, I think.
No, Geonosis is that's the name of the.
There's a Star Wars planet. There's a character in Mega Man called Geo, spelled differently.
And that's who you're named after.
Deep kinship with him. Deep kinship with all Geos.
Gio, what's the news from Texas? What are people in Texas? The Lone Star State, it goes its own way. It's as big. It's as big as a country, and everything's bigger. And it hugs. It pulls you close, and it hugs you. And but it also can. Its love is fickle. They say.
And don't forget the grackles.
I can only speak for myself. Today, I'm really interested in Deep Fear for the Sega Saturn. I'm really excited to see it back on the table. I think it's an incredible game. I think it's maybe the Robbie game. There's so many aspects of it. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface. We haven't talked about Clancy's many war crimes, or Dubois, or the air grenade. I mean, it's
no, you
there's so much to talk about.
I mean, we've barely talked about the game at all, and that's when you have a game of this that has had this cultural impact that it does have. It's impossible. It can be daunting to wrap your head around it. I mean, how long does it take to finish Deep Fear? Probably in best case scenario, 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mid-size. I think it's comparable to like Resident Evil. It's going to take maybe 6 hours, I would estimate, if you know what you're doing.
And it doesn't give you, and unlike some of these later Resident Evil games that hold you by the hand and also reward you with sweet candy by giving you that New Game Plus mode where you can bring in all your weapons and upgrades to the next playthrough. Deep Fear throws you right back in the ringer and doesn't let go.
I forgot about that. Is there a New Game Plus?
In Deep Fear?
Yeah. I don't.
No.
I didn't remember that.
Are we talking to Gio?
We're talking to Gio from Texas. Yep. Gio, what are your thoughts on second puberty?
It sounds exciting and terrifying. I'm not sure if I would want that to happen, or maybe if that would be a thing I would wish on my enemies, or maybe that's an exciting thing you discover as you progress through the adventure of life. I feel like Allan might have something comparable to that. I feel like if someone were going to go through second puberty, it would be Allan.
I would absolutely love to experience second puberty. And I'm going to try to stop eating cooked foods right after the show. It's kind of like a New Year's resolution. No, I'm not going to cook anything. But I will be eating food still in hopes that somehow the chemicals in the raw food will trigger a second puberty to happen to me. And maybe I'd grow extra big and the testicles would become more like leathered tan.
You can grow a second beard.
Oh, a second beard, yes. Beard. That would be quite interesting, a second beard.
Double beard.
Or maybe like a thick unibrow like Robbie has.
That would be quite good, Allan.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kate. Thank you for that, Allan. And thank you for your call, Gio. But we do have to get to the funny video game news.
Oh, no.
Before the night takes us for a ride. So it's funny video game news. So first off, there's the first slide of funny video game news. And that is
this part's really funny, Kate.
And that is Deep Fear.
That's Deep Fear.
First slide is, of course.
No.
Here,
why don't
okay, gotta go back.
This is a really funny segment. Robbie
this is the funniest.
Robbie
segment.
does
this is the funniest segment of the show because
Robbie does this segment every time.
We've had these serious conversations. We have to get back to the beginning of the show. We're on number one. But funny video game news allows us to let our hairs down and not the hairs like the hairs at the bottom of the ocean, which are actually fish. Individual hairs are just fish.
No, you said they're fish.
But in fact, just regular hair that we have on our heads.
Someone's talking to me.
Who's this?
Robbie.
Who is it?
Who is this?
This is Gio. I'm still on the line.
Gio, stay on the line while we do the funny video game news. I'd love to hear because as a Texan, you have an outsized role in the democracy. So
this is unprecedented.
Unprecedented. It hasn't been. I don't think we've ever had. It is breaking news. We do have Gio on Funny Video Game News for the first time, but we got to get through this one quick. So let's hit this. Deep Fear is in the Funny Video Game News because the Deep Fear is in the Funny Video Game News because the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, has been caught on a hot mic saying the passion of these people and the power of their stories should shake us to the bones.
Is he talking about deep fear?
He's talking about I'm assuming that he's talking about, of course, Mookie and John Mayer and Iron Fist McCoy.
Was that the joke?
That was. I don't know if that is a joke, because I mean that's the question. Gio, you can answer this question. Is Anthony Albanese on his bully pulpit there in the Australian, assume an outback situation when he because on some sort of a vision quest on a bit of a ramble? They go on rambles there, don't they?
I think that could probably apply to a lot of things, but because it's already in funny video game news, I think we do know that this does apply to Deep Fear, and that's what it was in the context of.
Well, and also you can imagine that Anthony Albanese is got these the classic Australian accent, which of course is kind of a hybrid kind of a situation. So it's instead of the passion of these people, he said what does he say? What is it? How does it
Australian accent?
What does it say?
Passion.
The passion of these people and the
passion.
power of this. No,
The passion? No, that's New Zealand. New Zealand goes up at the end.
Think of Steve Irwin. Think of Steve Irwin. Picture him in your mind.
Yeah, so
and
Steve.
go.
And the passion and
the passion of what is he saying?
The passion of these people.
Right.
What is he talking
He's
about?
talking about the passion of these people. The power of the stories.
That's not a knife. That's how you do it, actually.
That's not a knife.
Yeah, you say
the passion of these people and the stories.
First say that's not a knife.
That's not a knife.
Now say the funny video
on the Sega Saturn.
Oh, I meant to do wrong button.
Great. Then that's funny video game news. So in fact, it turned out, Gio, are you still with us?
I am.
So that turns out it was funny video game news, huh? So Deep Fear is in the funny video game news, simply not just because that we're talking about it, but because the president of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, says the only table I need is the big table.
That's funny video game news.
What does he talk
So,
about?
of course, James Marape, the president, I'm sorry, not prime minister, is a presidential system over there in the PNG, and that's PNG, the country.
Not the file.
Papua New Guinea is
TIFF.
What?
TIFF file. I was thinking about different files.
Like Timor?
TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival.
Anyway, Papua New Guinea is a classic country. It's a beautiful country. Of course, the Ozymandias, not Ozymandias. Who's the other one?
Ozymandias.
The other one from they said Shangri-La. Who's the Shangri-La feller?
Robbie, what are you talking about?
They said that Shangri-La was in Papua New Guinea.
I don't know if people on Twitch care about
James Marape is caught on a hot mic saying that the only table that he needs is the big table, leading me to believe that he has no tables in his home because he's made as much space as possible to get all of his. Because sometimes it's better to be in a minimalist situation.
That's
so
what
all
they
of your
say.
thoughts about Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn can come out naturally through a simple projection of thought. So he's a big. I'm saying, he's in a lot. And the PNG is, of course, in a lot of trouble because of the climate change, and of course because there's always these, dastardly explorers with only the big bucks and the money on their minds.
What are you talking about? Big
crashing
table?
Their airplanes into the jungle trying to find Shangri-La.
And Big Table refers to what?
The Big Table is a colossal underwater research facility teeming with scientific advancements and terrible secrets.
Oh, from the game, the thing, the game.
I
get it.
It's pretty good stuff. And the funny video game news continues, of course, with Deep Fear is in the funny video game news. Not because we've been talking about it all night, but also because the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, says interesting game, but I really could have done with more Mookie. Unfortunately, what Mark Rutte seems to be implying is that we don't get enough Mookie, and maybe by the end, Mookie doesn't make it out of the big table, James Marape's big table, and of course, Mark Rutte would not be speaking on this matter if it wasn't so important, because he is not only the current Prime Minister of the Netherlands, but he could be the outgoing Prime Minister of the Netherlands if the right-wing government of Geert Wilders can find themselves a coalition partner, and making Mr. Wilders the then Prime Minister of the Netherlands, replacing a center-right coalition with a far-right-headed coalition.
But Mark Rucke's in front of Dino Crisis.
But Mark Rutte is the president. Is still the prime minister. I keep saying president. He's the prime minister of the Netherlands.
The PM.
The PM of the Dutch PM.
But why is he in front of Dino Crisis?
Yeah, why is that Dino Crisis?
No, that's the funny video game.
Was that the joke that it was the wrong image?
Funny video game news continues with Deep Fear, not because we're talking about funny video game news, but not because I'm talking about it, or Alan or Kate or anybody in the chat is talking about Deep Fear.
I wasn't talking about it.
But because funny video game, because Christopher Walken, famed actor and media personality Christopher Walken,
and Fatboy Slim video performer,
has said, "What I wouldn't give to be remade in a different time, a different body, if I could see these images and hear these words as a young man and be forever changed by them. But seeing them now only reminds me of how much time has passed, how much time has been wasted. May God forgive me for every moment spent not being a better person."
Wow.
Is that funny? Because he's not in the. Is he in the news?
Well, he's a media personality. So I think that when you're a media personality, when you have a cross section of influence throughout your day to day.
Does that count?
Well, he's in the funny video game news.
He's just an actor.
He's not just an actor. He's a media personality.
Well, I think he's talking about the part of the game in Final Fantasy Rebirth where you go to Golden Saucer.
I heard a voice.
Which is
Well, Gio from Texas is still here with us. Gio, what are your thoughts on the funny video game news, and do you have any funny video game news of your own to impart on us this evening?
I do, and that's what I was waiting to say. I will say that I do know that Christopher Walken is also a video game expert, because he's in Ripper from 1997, which is an incredible FMV game. So he's kind of jack of all trades.
Robbie does,
of course, and the classic Australian accent, of course, has to come to play here, because you're not just the Ripper, you're the Ripper.
Ripper.
And Robbie does an incredible Christopher Walken impression.
It's bring me the knife.
No,
the crocodile.
not the Australian
the crocodile is real.
No,
bring me the knife. I'm the Ripper, and I ain't taking no for an answer tonight.
The Christopher Walken impression.
The Christopher Walken impression.
Yeah, I don't think he's Australian. He's kind of like a noir kind of.
He's the Ripper mane.
No, Robbie says
they got the bug mane
he
now.
May or may not be the Ripper.
No, Robbie goes, I'm Christopher Walken. Yeah.
I'm gonna bust you. I'm here to bust the door down.
No, he says.
I says to him.
Walken.
He walks in. Christopher Walken walks into Babbage's or EB Games in 1997 and says, "Get on your knees. I think I'm here for Deep Fear for the Sega Saturn, and if they haven't released it yet, then you better eat dirt."
I do think he would have wanted to be in Deep Fear, but it was not a full motion game, and it was on the Sega Saturn, so that didn't work out. So they put him on the back burner.
They cut corners, is what you're saying. They could have had the real Christopher Walken, and they didn't have the Christopher Walken.
You know, I'm happy that Deep Fear got the graphical style it did, because we got the full monkey. We got lots of monkey animations that probably would not have gotten the full motion video. So I'm happy to see Ripper be Ripper and Deep Fear be Deep Fear. I think it worked out.
Ooh.
I do have some breaking news.
We have breaking
news from Texas.
Breaking news from Texas. Go ahead.
So remind me, is it game first or newsmaker first?
Game first.
Okay, so Cabela's Big Game Hunter is in the news. The tie-in game from 2007 sold by the Cabela's Sporting Goods store. And Cabela's is in the news because Greg Abbott from Texas, I haven't in here, he's a big gun fan. And he was playing Cabela's Big Game Hunter from 2007 for the Nintendo Wii. And he said he liked the gunplay, he liked the gun parts, but he thought that the deer was a little bit gamey.
You thought the deer was gay?
The deer was too gamey for him.
The deer was too gamey?
Gamey. The deer was too gamey. Greg Abbott said that?
Oh, I get it. That is funny video.
Oh, I get it.
And actually, this reminds me of something that I wanted to share.
That's
and
very funny, Gio.
So we're going to have to...
Thank you, Gio.
Thank you for
Thank you,
Gio.
Gio.
For the funny
Allan,
video
back
game
to you,
news
Robbie.
from Texas. Let's let Gio go because we do have to one thing, which is that I forgot to do this when we got to the James Marape part of the funny video game news. So let me just text back there. There he is. So the only table he needs is the big table, and that to me sounds a little bit like a pun, and therefore we now have to, this just in, breaking news, we've got a new button, which is now that's punny video game news.
Oh.
I don't think we should do that,
This will
Robbie.
be good.
That's punny video game
Hey,
news.
Robbie, I don't think we should do.
Why can't we do that?
I just don't enjoy puns.
Everyone enjoys puns, Alan.
That is not true.
Yes. The table joke, that's punny video game news.
I don't. Why? How is that a? Wait, read it again.
The only table I need is the big table, and instead of saying that's the funny video game news, I say that's the punny video game news.
I think Gio's joke was a pun, which I didn't like. No offense to Gio, but I don't think the big table. I don't think that's a pun.
Well, let's take a quick break, and then when we come right back, we are going to get Alan's special report tonight. We have a special report. Kate, will you be staying with us for the special report?
Of course, I would never miss the special report. Are you kidding me?
Let's take a quick couple minutes, and then we'll be right back with that special report. We're ready. We're ready to come back from the break, and we're back. So we're gonna have now that we're back from our break, we've all digested as much of the information as possible.
I have something to share. I'm sitting in this chair, cross-legged. This is my favorite way to sit. My physical therapist that I just talked to told me not to sit like this because it's hurting my psoas muscle, and a part of my lower back is rotating where it shouldn't be rotating. But I'm treating myself to sitting like this for a few moments.
Can't you just cross your legs the other way?
Yeah, can't you just crisscross, do the other leg crisscross to counteract?
You know,
I'm agreeing with you.
You guys should be my doctor, and my doctor should be fired.
How should you sit?
I guess this is how I never sit, and this is maybe...
Because the human body
that should counteract it.
And this is, every part of it, this has been scientifically proven that the human body is just a mirrored version of one half of itself.
A mirrored version of one half of itself. That's exactly right.
Well,
my doctor didn't say anything about that.
Without further ado, Allan, I believe we're talking about talking about Deep Fear here tonight because we're talking about the survival horror games that with a nautical environment. And to me, you can't talk about Deep Fear without also talking about what I believe and what a lot of people in chat and call were saying about the game Carrier. And so I thought tonight, Lady Kate O'Connor, everyone in chat, Lady, can I call you Lady O'Connor?
My boyfriend wanted to call you guys, but no one picked up.
I'm sorry that no one picked up, Danny. Also, a gamer we understand, but fortunately we just had to get through so much funny video game news.
You can call me Lady
and we had
O'Connor.
And then we had to roll back because I had to make sure we talked about punny video game news. But now we're going to talk about Carrier on the Sega Dreamcast. And Allan, if you were ready with your special report, you can take it away at any moment where you see fit. I'm going to otherwise just...
Ifan Ixosik and Shushicho game Osar Stikia and Didim Ningime Bishosik Hello Gamers, I have a special report for you. I will be talking about Carrier on the Sega Dreamcast, of course. It was released in 2000 by Jaleco Entertainment, stands as a compelling entry in the survival horror genre. Set aboard the mysterious Heimdall aircraft carrier, the game captivated players with its atmospheric storytelling and intense gameplay. Plot and setting. Players assume the roles of Aegis and Barker, members of an investigative team exploring the abandoned Heimdall in the Pacific Ocean. As they uncover the ship's dark secrets, they encounter mutated creatures and unravel a complex narrative of experimentation and conspiracy. Gameplay mechanics. Carrier offers third-person exploration, emphasizing resource management and combat. Players scavenge for supplies while navigating treacherous environments, engaging in strategic battles against a variety of grotesque enemies. Critical response and player reception. Upon release, Carrier received mixed reviews from critics, while praised for its atmospheric presentation and engaging storyline. Some criticized its clunky controls and repetitive gameplay elements. However, among players, the game developed a cult following for its immersive atmosphere and challenging gameplay, legacy, and impact. Despite its initial reception, Carrier has endured as a cult classic on the Dreamcast. Its unique setting, tense gameplay, and branching narrative paths continue to captivate fans of the survival horror genre. While overshadowed by other titles, Carrier remains a testament to the Dreamcast's diverse library and its ability to deliver compelling gaming experiences. Conclusion: Carrier on Dreamcast remains a cult classic cherished by fans of survival horror. Its atmospheric storytelling, tense gameplay, and enduring legacy solidify its place in gaming history as a standout title on the Dreamcast platform. And back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan, and thank you for that thoughtful look at Carrier on the Sega Dreamcast. I wonder if you could take a second here, Allan, to talk a little bit about the Heimdall, the naming of the ship Heimdall. Or perhaps, in fact, the naming of the ship Heimdall versus the big Heimdall and the big. There seems to be a connection here between giant. You got Heimdall on one side, you got the big table on the other side. What do you got to say about that link between Deep Fear and Carrier?
Yes, Robbie, I do know what you are talking about. I understand that.
And thank you. And of course, you can't have, what is the. Allan, you're the Carrier expert.
And I also have played that game. It was a very good game and fun to play. Back to you, Robbie.
back to you, Allan, and Kate, what are your thoughts here about this special report? Because this is the first time I think we've had the carrier special report on twitch.tv/EGI_2.
I'm just really happy about this special report.
Well, what in terms of connecting the type of gameplay between Carrier and Deep Fear, the scarce resources, the extreme environments, the risks of exposure. And exposure is always one of those kinds of deaths that's always confused me a little bit. I mean, it's in the name, I suppose, isn't it, Allan?
If you're just joining us, this is twitch.tv/EGI_2.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So
yes, Robbie, I can hear you.
It's not just being crushed by the heavy water.
Skin of the water.
The skin is the water.
And the fish is the hair, and the sharks are the fingernails.
The sharks are the fingernails.
The sharks
and the teeth.
are the fingernails.
And Allan, in terms of we're talking about a viral outbreak on a ship, Allan?
Such a wise comment you just made. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me.
The scary thing about bugs and viruses and such is that they're so small, there's no way to avoid them.
Such a wise comment you just made. Thank you for sharing.
And of course, if you're gonna make them, and once the viruses and of course the bugs get into the human skin, and that's where the normal human skin is, and they start to grow larger inside of the humans and to take over the humans' bodies, that often leads to these kinds of scenarios that we see here in Carrier and Deep Fear, Allan.
Mutation.
And thank you, Robbie, for that milk you just produced with your thoughts and ideas. Thank you for nourishing me and the rest of the EGI2 family with your healthy milk. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan.
Okay, and Allan's not thanking me. Allan needs to say thank you, Kate.
Okay, let's.
Yes, Robbie, I do know what you are talking about. I understand that.
Kate, we're gonna go to the phones right now to see what people are saying. To see what people are saying about Carrier on the Sega Dreamcast. Allan's special report. We've touched a lot of bases here on this evening, and the most important base to me, though, is still the colossal underwater research facility, the big table, and the tragedy that unfolds therein. Caller, you're on the air with EGI2, twitch.tv/EGI_2. What are your thoughts, and where are you calling from?
Well, back to you, Robbie, and back to you, Kate, and back to you, Allan. It is Scott from the pit.
Scott, what are your thoughts on the Carrier situation?
Well, back to you, Robbie. To be quite honest with you, I was quite entranced by that special report. It was one of the best special reports, I believe, that we have seen on the show.
Oh, wow. That's interesting to me. Keep talking, please.
Now that Allan is being paid bits, that he should probably be they should probably be doubled in the very least in as much information that he puts into these segments. I also, I don't want to rewind the show too much, but as you know, sometimes I research and do a little funny video game news, and I did have one that kind of relates back that Kate kind of, back to you, Kate kind of brought up earlier.
Back to you, Robbie.
Thank you, Scott.
and back to you, Kate. Well, it was you brought up Tomb Raider earlier. And it's funny that you brought that up because back to you, Robbie, and back to you, Allan. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Tomb Raider was actually in the news recently, where developers Crystal Dynamics actually revealed what the new look of Lara Croft would be.
Yes,
and if you could imagine,
they're kind of collaborating the two looks from the more mature Tomb Raider games of more recent years, and of course the original designs, core designs from the original 5 Tomb Raider games. There's 5 actually. People talk about Tomb Raiders 1, 2, and 3, but they forget there was 4 in Chronicles.
There was a top-down. There was a crazy time when they did a top-down Tomb Raider. It was nuts.
and back to you, Kate, and back to you, Robbie. You know, and it right now, if you could imagine, is where and you know, and everyone might you would close your eyes or you leave them open, whichever way you prefer. But this is where you would imagine a slide of Laura Croft, and she would be there in her iconic blue tank top, her khaki shorts, and of course her dual pistols, and she's standing there, and the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, actually had this to say about these released images, and he said, you know, while I am a big fan and love the color blue, I do wonder if this lady has another outfit.
Oh, because she always wears a blue shirt with the khaki shorts.
Scott, that is not funny video game news. I'm pretty sure that counts as funny video game news. Scott, thank you for your call.
A funny punny video game news.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your call. We got another caller on the line right now.
That was such a good call.
It's such a good call. We call that a twofer when you get the funny video game news and the funny video game news in one call, and we got that. And thank you, Scott, from Pittsburgh, for being such a detailed orator of the funny video game news, of course, of the political winds that are blowing there in Harrisburg. We have the call we have a caller right now. Caller, who are you? Where are you calling from? And what are your thoughts on Carrier for the second Dreamcast?
Oh, this is AB from Texas again. Great to call in.
AB from Texas, another Texan. Glad to hear the what?
There's a bird in Texas called Grackle, and I tried to bring it up earlier, but we had more important things to talk about. But I would just like to say I like grackles.
Don't worry, all the Texas ones heard you.
Please tell me more about that game you were telling me.
Listeners, viewers, watched you, heard you, and we acknowledge the grackles. We love grackles.
Thank you.
We hear when I hear
that
grackles, I think of that sounds like a name of one of these orcs characters from Warhammer Gorka Morka.
That's been a bit of punny video game news.
No, that doesn't count.
A little bit. No, okay. But anyway, we're here to talk about Carrier.
Yes.
And I'm reading here, it says it revolves around some economic events following the year 2008. I think that's kind of spooky, considering this came out like a long time before the 2008 economic declines. Like, did the makers have something to do with it? Did they predict it? Do you think they have a hand in the housing market? That's kind of concerning.
Are you asking me if you think that Jalico may have had something to do with the financial collapse of 2007 to 2008?
That, or they were tapped in. They knew something, because they have it as a major theme here. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. The second, I'm trying to read more about this ship. What is this called? The Heimdall?
The Heimdall. Heimdall. Is it Heimdall or Heimdall?
Heimdall.
Heimdall, of course, is one of the Heimdall is the one that stands atop the Rainbow Bridge.
I was wondering.
That's where my cat will be heading to.
Oh yes, everybody pray for Manny.
Pray for Manny.
Pray for Manny because Manny could be headed to. But well, if you head into the Rainbow Bridge, maybe it's not so bad because you get to wine and dine with it and hear all the stories of all of the Viking gods and all of their acolytes and avatars from, of course, Midgar, which is where we all currently reside.
I think the rule about that though is that he has to die fighting. Is Manny a fighter? Has he got claws?
Oh yes, he is a fighter.
Good. I like to hear that. But back to this ship, the Heimdall. It's so the game takes place there. Is it's 3D like Deep Fear and like Resident Evil and with tank controls and all that? Is what I'm led to believe?
It's Deep Fear. It's on the Sega Saturn. It does have tank controls, but it has one. And I think I think, caller, as someone from Texas, I think you're gonna appreciate this very much. Is that it was one of the first survival horror games where you could aim and shoot and move at the same time.
Oh dang! I gotta look into that. I'm a big fan of tank controls. I think they need to make a comeback, really, and we need them back.
Back to you. And Kate, what are your thoughts?
here's my thoughts. Have you guys ever seen people do this?
Yeah, to wake
Amy Sedaris always does this like a joke, but I think it's like an old-timey thing, like try to get rid of your double chin or something, or it's like kind of a showbiz thing.
Well, I always think that that's something I've always seen people do that. When I used to have to drive along, sometimes I would drive. Here's a true story, and someone from Texas with a great not panhandle. Well, you do have a panhandle, but you also have some Gulf Coast there. Sometimes you're driving back through the woods from one of these nice little Gulf Coast towns, and it's late at night, and maybe you've had a lot of fried fish, and you start to get really sleepy about 10 minutes into the drive. And one of the things that we used to do as children, and I think that this could be a universal thing that's happened, is you would just flick the bottom of your chin to keep yourself awake, because those roads, the coastal roads are not well kept, and to slide off into the swamp could be quite a dangerous proposition.
Galveston.
Especially like Galveston, St. Mark's, or what have you, Panacea. What was the other one, Allan? Appalachian Coal. Not Appalachian Coal. That's a little bit more developed. But the fact of the matter is that some of these forgotten, they call it William Burroughs had a book called The Place of the Dead Roads. And I think of that, when I think about coastal roads like that, I think of dead roads. Kate?
I do too.
I absolutely agree with this. Another thing to note is that on that road coming back from Galveston, going towards Houston specifically, I don't know where else, but the road, the side barricades that prevent the car from like going off into the water or off into the trail or whatever, the concrete is like kind of wavy. And as a kid, if you're in like the passenger seat or the back seat, it can be kind of hypnotizing. And so you do that chin flicky thing to keep awake. But another fun thing about that is you can actually like make your throat kind of big and like bulge it out and like make a different tone and do musical tones with it. Let's see if I can do it now.
Please tell me more about that game you are telling me about.
It's kind of hard.
Yes.
You try
and
that?
that's a good thing to do in the car.
Yeah.
Danny says that's the seawall.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Thank you for the call, and thank you for the seawall, and we'll carry that with us for the rest of our lives, and the knowledge and the thoughts and the dreams along with you. Stay safe. It's a big state, and the roads are way too large, and to cross them is to take your life into your own hands in the great state of Texas.
I agree. Thank you very much. Good night and sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams, and may your dreams always be. And this is, and we do a bit of praying on the show. May your dreams always be. I had a dream. I'll tell you what. A dream I had the other just last night. Allan, you were in this dream. And Allan,
Robbie, you say the most amazing things.
I had just stayed overnight in the Plaza Hotel in New York City.
Nice.
And we woke up the next morning and we said we've got a late checkout, so let's step outside for a bit of a lunch. We'll go to Tavern on the Green, the classic Tavern on the Green there in Central Park. Get ourselves a coffee and a couple scrambled eggs there. And when we walked back, we found that the Plaza Hotel was spinning on like a giant turntable and sinking into the ground.
Huh.
And the last thing that I says to you before I woke up was, well, now it's gonna be a lot. I says now, the Plaza Hotel is spinning, it's sinking into the ground, and I look at Allan and I say, it's gonna be how are we gonna get? I was worried that we weren't going to. One, I was worried that we weren't going to be able to get to our room in time, and two, I was worried that we weren't going to be able to find the lobby after we had all of our stuff ready, so we could return our key.
That's like how Sector 13 drops down. Section 13 drops down and crushes the area where Tifa's bar is in Final Fantasy VII. And guess what? Shinra planned it.
Because with the dropping of the bar and the dropping of the Section 13.
Yes,
Caller,
Robbie, I can
you're on
hear
the air with EGI, twitch.tv/EGI_2. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Tony from Walmart.
Tony from Walmart. What's the good news from the great store of Walmart?
Sucks. But do you mind if I talk about something controversial?
Is it like the brown word?
Hey, we're open-minded.
Oh, wow. No. So, you guys were talking about Tomb Raider, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they basically said the remaster is racist, and that makes me mad. Like, why would they say that? They're calling us racist for playing the originals, you know? Doesn't that make you mad?
Well, nothing makes me worse. honestly, now I've been thinking about this Plaza Hotel situation, and the only thing that's making me mad is trying to think if they're going to have these rules about this giant spinning elevator hotel that goes into the ground in the morning. Well, maybe they should have a bit more flexibility with the checkout.
I mean, that's what Walmart does.
Walmart
that is so
spins
interesting.
around like on a giant turntable and sinks to the ground in the morning?
The really expensive ones do. The more
to like
classy
wash it off?
Yeah.
Because that was what Plaza did.
Someone wants Lara Croft to wear a different color shirt, but yet we don't ask Indiana Jones to wear a different color shirt.
And that's punny video game news.
And then I'm also mad that they made her.
That is so interesting.
Like that's not fair.
It's okay for her to have large breasts and be active. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think the most important thing in life is to keep your heart rate up as much as possible, whether you're running away from giant spinning buildings and trying to cross large grasslands in search of game or wildlife, or if you're just chasing something for just the sake of feeling the air and the grass whip against your legs.
Have you all ever seen someone drink so much water? You'd think I was an early renal failure.
Tony from Walmart, when you close your eyes and you imagine yourself floating into the air, as most of us do, do you float to? Do you like to think that you're floating to some sort of a receptacle? Or do you like to think that you're just floating straight up on and on endlessly until maybe you get a breadth of the universe as a whole?
Oh, when I was flying in one of my dreams, I had to take a rest. A couple times.
That is so interesting.
The people in my dreams got mad I was flying, so they told me to get back down on the ground.
See, there's not enough. People don't communicate well enough anymore, and I think that is the tragedy of our modern era. And back when we had when we just had these little settlements out there on the Eurasian steppe, and our stomachs were distended from the giant intestines that we had grown because of all of the raw meat that we had been eating and all of the experimentation with scrounging and gathering. We just were so tired and sick all the time that we just lied on top of each other and gave each other comfort simply with the warmth of our bodies.
Such a wise comment you just made. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me.
Well, thank you for your call, Tony from Walmart. We do have one more segment this evening, and that, of course, is our classic EGI twitch.tv/EGI_ segment called It's the Arts. Okay, do you like art?
I absolutely love art.
Well, get ready for It's the Arts live here tonight for the very first It's the Arts, and this art comes to us from Jan Redmond, and this is, of course, is a beautiful image taken a phone, kind of a image of a kind of a data moshing situation that happens when your phone is connected to the internet and it gets cross-beamed with another phone, because the way that phones work, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that phone beams beam these invisible beams of light, and when they cross each other, then you get these beautiful, almost seemingly accidental artifacts, and that's what's happening here in this picture of me out there doing the video game news.
That's interesting to me.
Video game news and reviews from the street. And that if this one is since this one is the daytime, I assume that we're down there by the Los Angeles River.
Well,
park.
Speaking of athletics and athleticism, a la Lara Croft. Art is simply athletics for your brain.
As long as you keep your heart rate up, anything is possible. Next up on, thank you for Jan Redmond for that this beautiful image here.
Thank you so much.
And if you look here, I want to just point out here the artifacts have not. It's not just a screen grab. It's something that's been enhanced. They pulled it apart. They made a lot of they deepened some of the lines and the fissures there in the image, and so you get less of a. It's not just a facsimile because it doesn't need to be. It is the thing itself. And I think John Berger said that. Next up on It's the Arts, it's Hambone Boussy.
Wow.
And of course, we had a conversation last week when it came to the stories that had to be told with the hype train, which involved a Diplodocus and a Deinonychus, which are, of course, someone who probably grew up in Chicago near the High Museum.
High Museum.
Of course, the dinosaurs in there, they've had to flip out the dinosaur, the old, what we used to call the dinosaurs, with the new dinosaurs. So your Brontosaurus, your Diplodocus, and your Deinonychus out the window, not into the lake, and replaced with, of course, your Velociraptors and your the ones that Brontosaurus became.
Yeah.
And so Hambone Boosie has captured the moment where these two desperate creatures, just so focused on making it through the prehistory period, so that they could have comfortable lives like us, where we have all of the trappings of electricity and heated homes and cars that drive on streets. And we do know that some people had cars, of course, back in these prehistory times, but they weren't normal cars, and they didn't have roads.
Robbie, do you ever notice how every time you try and look at a picture of a dinosaur, someone goes, "Oh, that picture's old. The scientists have actually found out they didn't look like that. They look different than that." You're looking at an old picture that's an old idea of a dinosaur.
Well, what I would
and you're like, okay, show me the new one. And every single time they try and show you the new one, they're like, well, there might be this might be wrong too, because the scientists are always changing their mind about what the dinosaurs really looked like.
That is so interesting.
The dinosaurs are always changing sizes, and they're changing shapes, and they're switching the heads to different bodies, and they're just...
Talk about, hey, you want Laura Croft's shirt to be a different color? You gotta go over to the dinosaur museum. You'll be happy as a pig and shit.
Well, the brown word.
The brown.
So thank you for that, Hambone. And next up, we have Crapmaster Zach in with a black and white comic here. Yes, a black and white comic strip, as you might see in your friendly neighborhood newsletters that you pick up from the grocery store. They're by the counter. Sometimes they're in my grocery store. This is a true story. My grocery store has the newspapers and newsletters out closer to the front door. So you'd say, when you get to the cash register, you say, "I'd like a copy of that newsletter there." And then they ring it up at the newspaper, and then you just pick it as an honor system. Because I could leave with 5 or 6 of those things if I wanted to, but I never do.
And firewood is on the honor system as well.
And so it's such a weird thing what we choose to have honor systems for. It's fires, newsletters, of course, sometimes watermelons are out there.
Well, the honor system is weird because they always charge way too much for this stuff. And they go, "Oh yeah, firewood, it's $13.99. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to take it. If they made it cheaper, people would pay for it.
Absolutely. And the same thing, I think, with just general transit planning when it comes to properly aligning connections. Crapmaster Zach here says, this is, of course, a comic strip where looks like just a very unhealthy, just an unhealthy drawing of me saying, "I'm tired of this show." Allan responds with wonderful thoughts and praise, Allan, and love, unconditionally so. And I respond to, you can't not respond to love without love, unless, of course, unless you have to. What I'm saying is the relationship with the person has to be strong enough to start lobbing the love word back and forth. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be using that word sparingly, because I do think that what the world needs now is, of course, love and sweet love. And
but there's a thin line between love and hate.
And there's also a thin line between I think just kissing and on the mouth and kissing on the neck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And depending on what kind of a person you are, you might prefer one or the other as just a general. Because Europeans, they'll kiss you all over the neck, won't they?
Wow. So
and that
that's
isn't
what
to say we do have some watchers
and
we do have some watchers from Germany and the UK. I still consider the UK part of the Europe, despite their votes back there in 2016. But I will say, if you can prove me wrong that people aren't constantly grabbing you off of subways and double-decker buses and kissing you on the neck, then show me the proof. And I'll walk back that statement, but I've lived it, and at least a dream is a life.
Yep.
If you're just
Cat with the funny video game news hits us. Of course, this is Kyle Mazzono, my cousin, Kyle Mazzono. We found out that I had a cousin living very close to me because of a person that I met at a CVS, not a person who worked at CVS, but a person wasn't. I saw them on the bus is what it was, and they said that everybody. If they handed me a list of people, and they said all these people are your cousins, and one of them was Kyle Mazzono, famed comedian, LA scene stir comedian. Kyle Mazzono came in and gave us her thoughts on being on family and what family and what a family is, and we gave her the funny video game news, and we hit her with the funny video game news, and she walked out of here in not a small amount of pain, but luckily no scars were visible, and 50. There's not a lot of things in that situation that $50 can't cure.
$50 is a great amount of money these days. Used to be a $20 bill.
Especially when you accidentally just hurt somebody with just the sheer amount of funny video game news that we were tossing at her unexpectedly.
I did something at work like a couple weeks ago, and I had to kind of like do something that was kind of. I had to do something at work that wasn't pleasant, and their solution was to hand me a $50 bill, and that felt so good.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Now we know how to, if you're harmed on the way out, by no fault of EGI, twitch.tv/EGI_2, then we have an opportunity to make it up to you.
Please give bits and bytes to us, please. Subscribe and follow us now. Let's get a hype train going, you guys.
Thank you, Allan.
Thank you, Allan, for that. And Allan, of course, is such a fan of the show, and which is why he's always done such great work with the correspondence and finding out what people are saying about these great video games, and great and underappreciated video games on the street. Next up, we have, of course, this is Dominic from PA has sent in a beautiful poem here for us to read tonight. Dominic PA has sent in a poem that I'll read out loud right now, which is, I wanted to send an email about the sound effects for the 6 to 710 game reviews. I like to catch up with the streams at work, and I listen with the headphones. I know you run into a recurring issue with the volume of the sound effects being very loud, but I don't think that's the issue, and that's a stanza. I think the issue is that the microphone you speak into is too quiet. I have to nearly max out the headphones to get a comfortable point of hearing you, but because of that, your microphone never clips, but then the sound effects make me have to turn it all down. I think increasing mic volume, not gain, because that's where you start to introduce distortion, would help with the sound issue. It would level up your microphone levels with the sound effect levels, which I don't believe are actually too loud. Hope this helps. Also increase color volume as well. Beautiful poetry there from fan of the show, Dominic PA. Nothing better, I think, than rounding out a good and fun evening with a beautiful poem from a caring soul.
And the best part about
Please
poems,
sound off in the chat if there is something wrong with the show.
The best part about poems is they make no sense.
Poems, you heard it here first. Poems make no sense, but the heart rarely makes sense of its own.
Poems make no sense, and it reminds you of
the heart.
Your heart.
And the heart also makes decisions that sometimes fly in the face of sense.
Yes.
Next up on the arts, of course, we have a beautiful drawing, or painting rather, of a candle holder that we used to have here on the desk. That used to go right up here, and that was a bit of a point of contention between Allan and myself. But we promised, but because Allan is such a fan of the show, because Allan, of course, does so much work for the show, that we decided to showcase the candle holder itself, while also saying that we will get rid of the candle holder as soon as as soon as we hit 1,000 followers, and which we did, and we got rid of the candle holder. But now the candle holder is back, and it's here on twitch.tv/EGI_2 stream 11 for the very first time. forward these beautiful. This is another comic strip here from Kimball Anderson. Oh, and of course I forgot to say thank you to Geisinger, who might be sounds German to me. Do it again.
Geisinger.
Wow, that's good stuff. And that's wow. Okay. Thanks Hex, and I think Hex, of course, makes me think of Hexen.
I've been practicing my Bavarian accent.
And next up, we have beautiful cartoons from Kimball Anderson, and this is less of a this is less, of course, about the narrative. It's less about the words in the screen that I can't quite see completely because it's far away. But it's just about the mood that's being set here, and the words. It's a vibe. It is a vibe, and a vibe is And a vibe can carry a lot of things. A vibe can carry a lot of things. You might say some films, your Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a vibe. That's a vibe that carries a picture. A vibe is a vibration,
and what's a vibration?
Such a wise comment you just made. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Allan.
And thank you, and back to you, Allan, and back to you, Back to you, Kimball Anderson, with this beautiful, with of course the denouement of the first half. Well, I guess it's not necessarily a denouement if it's split, if the story is split in two. Or is it, Kate? Back to you, Kate. Back to you, Allan.
Back to you, Robbie.
Thank you, Allan.
And thank you, Kimball Anderson, for these beautiful. It's the etching that really gets me here. It's less about the forms. It's less about the words, and it's less about the kind of dissolution of language that happens in this piece. But it is in fact the hard lines, the lines that we draw for ourselves, on ourselves, every single day, walking in and out of the city or into the world, into the public. What's the vox populi kind of a situation, much like the woodcutter artist activists of the 1930s might have.
If you make the lines go a certain way, the lines all come together and look like a face.
And of course, and the narrative turns back to the center, as we've discussed on the show. Kimball Anderson. Whoa. That was a quick turnaround. I believe that this is, of course, this is from Laurel Lynn Leak drawing Flounder and Papa.
Oh,
What's
wow.
Flounder and Papa?
That's interesting to me.
Good gracious, that was a Laurel Lynn Leak, of course, is a fan of wonderful fan art, just master, I think, and this is just one of the what a great example of how the stories that we tell, so rarely in these stories of the olden days that we get from the olden days, do we actually get to see these stories made flesh in the way that the story of Flounder and Popper are made flesh.
Because really, Flounder and Papa are us, right?
Absolutely, and like Flounder, we have to grow. We have to figure out how to deal with our various details that are improperly placed as a result of just very strange metabolism. Of course, heart rate. We were talking about heart rate earlier. That's linked to metabolism. And when it comes to Popper, just devotion and devotion to someone who can pick you up with giant hands and lift you up and put you on their back, to start a family.
I'd love it if this person drew Flounder as the Breakfast at Tiffany's poster. And I have another comment too. Flounder kind of looks like an Asari, which is an alien race from the game Mass Effect.
And we talk about Mass Effect all the time on this show.
I love Mass Effect. I love it more than Final Fantasy. And I'm sorry if that upsets anybody.
Next up on It's the Arts, thank you, Laurel Lynn Leak, once again for such a swift turnaround with the story. We have It's the Arts. Is that it? No. Oh. Next up, this is we got to the end of the images, and now we have a couple of videos from a couple of wonderful souls.
I romanced Liara.
What?
I'm talking to Joe Botnick. I romanced Liara.
Oh my goodness gracious! Can you believe it? On just the amount of back and forth that Kate O'Connor is able to have with the Mass Effect audience in the chat right now has never been seen
And I also
before
played
on
that
VGI2.
game. It was a
Alan,
very
what are your
good
thoughts?
game and fun to play. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Alan. And
Alan.
First up, we have a video from Nathan Vegetable. Take it away, James.
Pandora's Tower. Fighting with Astral Chain, but no Astral. A sandwich calls and says hello. Is it okay if cousins kiss if it's upside down? Joe Botnick destroyed Wham City, but Cat's Rap brings them together. Pictures of Robbie and Allan holding hands in a hot tub. Bill Clinton has time traveled and played games before they released. We do not debate this fact. Scott is at the front door of the studio. Please call the police.
And of course, we're so many different forms poetry can take,
Yeah.
and we, you know, it was previous that we were able to do video poems on the regular that we made ourselves, but that was in a different epoch when we had a bit more of a financial cushion that allowed us to do such things.
Please give bits and bytes to us, please. Subscribe and follow us now. Let's get a hype train going, you guys.
And thank you for that, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
But we do, and back to you, Alan, and back to you, Kate, and
Thank you,
Nathan
Alan.
Vegetable for that beautiful poem. Of course, we're talking about like a foundation there. It's the Pandora's Tower in that poem, don't you think?
I saw Ness in there.
But you also saw Pandora's Tower.
Yeah.
Which of course is part of the Operation Windfall games, Alan.
Oh, Robbie, you say the most amazing things to me.
Next up, we have another video. Of course, this is from Ryan from Rhode Island. Let's take it away, and thank you, Ryan.
At 29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. Life lessons come one in a dozen.
We were talking about the cool water of the lake. Of course, you can't have a lake without a waterfall, and the waterfall has to come from somewheres. And sometimes someone's sitting on the waterfall, and that could be Ryan. It could be anybody.
Yeah, and you don't want logs in the lake
That's right, we
because
don't
the
want
lake will
logs.
go elsewhere.
Also, if the logs roll down, they could knock that person, whether it's Ryan or whoever's, and knock them. Just send them to the hospital. And these hospitals, they'll charge you for Q-tips. They'll charge you for napkins. Alan?
They don't give you $50
Oh, wow.
bills.
That's interesting to me. Keep talking, please.
They take $50 bills.
They take it away, and they won't. They've got no. There's no menu that you're picking your services from. They're giving it to you, and the logs just keep on their endless eternal roll down the hill towards the lake, and it's up to us I think, to stop it. So let's go take a few more phone calls this evening. Caller, you're on the air with EGI _ Twitch.
Hello?
Who is this?
Hello?
Who is it? Twitch.tv.
Hello?
You're on the air with Twitch.tv
Yes,
/
Robbie, I can hear
EGI
you.
_2. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
My name is Danny. I'm calling from Los Angeles, sunny California.
Danny from California.
Yeah, that's my
it's a
boyfriend.
What?
That's my boyfriend.
And get this, I am from Texas, too.
Danny from Texas. So we've got Amy from Texas, Gio from Texas, and now Danny from Texas is on the phone.
Do you care about where I'm from, or do you care about where I'm calling from?
Well, I'd like to know what your thoughts on the game Deep Fear for the Sega Saturn are.
Well, I'm gonna flip the script here and ask you a solid question that no one's been brave enough to ask yet.
Okay.
What's the main character's name? That's a sub question.
John Mayer.
John Mayer, Danny.
Possibly changed from John Major, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
So what if that character was in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? That's my big question. What
kind of a moveset would they have? What's their specials? What do they bring?
Wise comment you just made.
I'd love to explore that with you. I don't know anything about Deep Fear, but I'd love to explore this because I know a lot about Super Smash Bros. So if you wanted to describe some things, I could say what kind of moves they might be doing.
Alan, what do you think about what Danny's asking here? This is the first time we've gotten a question like this from Texas.
You always talk about the most interesting games. I love thinking about these games and thinking about the pleasure they give you to play them. I would urge others in the EGI2 family to play this underrated game and discuss it with friends and coworkers.
Danny, I think that if John Mayer here were a member of the Smash Brothers lineup there, if there was somehow a secret like almost like a silent release. What is it called? When they release something in the middle of the night. What's that called?
I think John Mayer should have the monkey move, where the monkey comes and helps.
Well, the monkey should absolutely. The monkey should help because the monkey is obviously a bit of a rascal, as we've seen in some of the clips there, and we have to understand that at any time John Mayer could call the monkey up to knock someone back and get them closer to the cliff sides that make those Smash Brothers arenas such a terrible place to try and do business. But I will say that one of the specials that I would picture is that the John Mayer would have the ability to don the exosuit, the diving suit, the exoskeleton, as quickly as possible to launch an extra heavy attack that could knock people back even further. But if you wanted to launch a flurry of monkey attacks, then you could just be bashing the monkey button.
That's a great idea. What kind of release? Are you talking about a release that comes in a silent release at night?
I'm talking about the release, silent, like when a shadow comes in the middle of the night, like the paralysis demons that come and stand at the ends of the bed and look down, and you wake up in the half fugue state, and you say to them, what are you doing there? What do you want? And they don't say anything. They're just shadows. And sometimes they have those bright burning eyes, don't they, Danny?
Oh yes, I have a question about that kind of moment. Do you think anyone's ever busted during sleep paralysis?
Oh wow, that's interesting to me.
Wow.
Keep talking, please.
Busted. Like the cops will come in and they'll take you away in the middle of the night. Unbelievable. No, I think that the dissolution of rights that you're describing is terrifying. And maybe if such a state exists on land, then why not just build an entirely new society there, like the big table is down below on the sea floor, where you can have your own rules but as also to follow the storylines that we see here, where we don't make the same mistakes that these people made, causing the viral outbreak that was caused there.
John Mayer's a beautiful natural blonde, just like Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII.
You heard it here first. That's breaking news. The two blondes. They used to call. They got the two towers. You got the two snakes. Of course, Snake Plissken, and also Snake Plissken, the two snakes. But now you also have the two blondes, Cloud and
Cloud
John
Strife
Mayer.
and John Mayer.
All right, I gotta get back to work on some personal stuff.
What kind of personal stuff do you have to get back to, Danny?
I'm writing ideas down in an email draft.
So like a lawyer?
Am I a lawyer?
Yes.
Is that what you? No. I'm not a lawyer.
So you're just in law school?
No. No.
What are your
I'm not in
ideas,
law
Danny?
school.
Danny, what are your ideas?
I'm writing down ideas for a meditation. I'm writing down meditation ideas.
See,
Please tell me more about that game you were telling me about.
Athletics for the brain. Yeah, my man's on that tip.
I have one other question. You were talking about Lara Croft too. Would she ever be in Smash Brothers? Would she be happy to be?
Isn't she already in Smash Brothers?
She's not in there, but I think we'd all
No,
like
they
to
don't
see her
let-
there.
Is she in the PlayStation
They
one?
didn't let her in. They put there's no PlayStation Smash Brothers. Right?
No, there is a PlayStation All Stars.
Oh, what is it called? All Stars, Brawl Stars.
But what I would like to see is if somehow we could get some of those Onimusha characters in from the Onimusha Smash Brothers. Jubei.
Excuse me.
I'd like to see Lara Croft in Kingdom Hearts.
I'd love to see Lara Croft in real life. I think she would have a lot of good stories to tell. I think she'd hold a great conversation. I think she's seen all sorts of crazy stuff.
And she'd make you a great cup of tea.
And she could make a great cup of tea, or maybe she could disassemble. She'd go into the kitchen there and she could pull out a bunch of stuff and disassemble it, and then make longer gun barrels, and she could get cans of screws off the shelf and toss those in there, do whatever.
I'd like to see Lara Croft maybe give Prince Harry a little smack.
Well, why would she go and do something like that?
Because he's acting like a spoiled brat.
Danny?
Yeah, I totally agree. Would you like to hear one idea?
Danny, if you could have Lara Croft come into your house and grab those cans, we all know that they're there. The tin cans, open tin cans of screws and nails and springs.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have her make?
Those shoes that went viral.
Allan?
Such a wise comment you just made. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me.
I know what I would have Lara Croft do in my home. I would have her work on my toaster oven, because my toaster oven has been losing power, and now I put a piece of toast in there at the highest power and it won't even toast.
That's terrible. I mean, so what you're asking is Lara Croft, the tomb raiding adventurer of lore, one of the most recognizable cultural figures of the last 30 years.
Yes.
Is at your house, and what you would like her to do is to fix your toaster oven, maybe make it bigger, maybe add some silencers to it, so when it shoots the toast out at the enemies coming into the house, the toast shatters and explodes.
Exactly.
I'd want her to make the shoes that went viral.
I can see why you love each other.
We got similar ideas. And to close the whole hangout out, I would show her my Andor Funko Pop, and I would ask her if she's seen the show Andor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Allan.
So, Danny, thank you for your call. I think we've run against the clock here, but I wanted to, if I can, spend a few moments just expressing my gratitude for Kate O'Connor and her joining us here tonight. Kate, I hope you had a wonderful time. I feel like I'm going to walk out of here tonight knowing more about Final Fantasy VII than I've ever known about Final Fantasy VII before.
Well, I basically felt like I spent about 10 hours at Golden Saucer being here on this stream. Golden Saucer being a kind of a amusement park within the game.
Thank you for that. And Allan, what are your thoughts about tonight? He's having
Robbie,
a great
you say
time
the most
over
amazing
there.
things to me. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan. And Allan, of course, is having a great time.
Yes, Robbie, I can hear you. If you're just joining us, this is twitch.tv/EGI_2.
And thank you to the chat for,
thank you.
for
Yeah,
being here.
And what
Please
have
sound
we
off
actually,
in the chat if there is
what,
something wrong
people,
with the show.
People at this point in the show, people are always reflecting on the evening before, sort of like the way that you look back at an evening out with friends, and you say, you know, maybe you've got a friend that just got divorced or has just gone through some sort of terrible calamity in their lives, and you wonder, was I sensitive enough to them? Did I listen to their thoughts, and have I been too judgmental to them before? And what do they deserve from me? And how can we go forward?
Yeah, and I'll make one last comment. And I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 right now, and if I could ask from that game one thing, I wish it was more of a fantasy game, because it kind of feels a little bit like a Marvel game. I'm almost getting like Marvel superhero kind of a feeling from that game, and I wish it was a little bit more kind of Dungeons and Dragons and less. I don't know. It feels like it feels comic booky a little bit to me. I wanted a little bit more fantasy. I romanced Lae'zel. Joe Botnick is asking my romances. Baezel, as they call her on the forums.
Oh wow.
Yes, Allan. She's a Githyanki.
And I also have played that game. It was a very good game and fun to play. Back to you, Robbie.
Back to you,
Thank
Allan.
you,
Back to you, Kate. And what a
Back
beautiful.
to you, Robbie.
Back to you, Allan.
You always talk about the most interesting games.
Thank you for saying that. And of course, Kate, thank you for saying that. What a beautiful series of thoughts that just streamed, just flowed from you, flowed from the heart out up the windpipe there, out into the world, and now we live with those words in the world.
I'm always having thoughts, and I recently made a comment on Julianne Moore's Instagram, and a lot of people got very upset with me, and they said, "Don't you say that? Don't say that." If you want to know, the comment was, Julianne Moore posted a picture of herself getting a really expensive facial, and I said, "Julianne Moore, I love you, but I don't need to see this. I don't need to see you get an expensive facial. Like, you're ruining the fantasy here." And there's many comments of people be like, "How dare you? You're jealous. This facial only costs $200. And if you want to hear more about that, just follow me on Instagram, because I'll be talking about it there a lot for probably the next
Please
couple
tell me
months.
more about that game you are telling me about.
Yes, thank you, Allan.
And Instagram handle is, of course, at Kate's Opinion on Instagram.com, which has its own
area.
Which has its own it has its own distinct area.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you notice that the list isn't here with us tonight, the reason is because we've been having so many technical and logistical difficulties getting the list up and running that we've decided to put it on a hold for indeterminate.
Please sound off in the chat if there is something wrong with the show.
There is something wrong with the show, Allan, and thank you for saying that, because the list is missed, and we will try our best to bring the list back to us, but because of some, like I said, technical and logistical issues, we just haven't been able to get it to work right in the way that we want it to work, and we will unfortunately be putting it on an indefinite hold. But hopefully, Kate, next time you're back, we will have the list, which is, of course, I take where I get a specific type of game with a specific type of like a parameter, like Xbox exclusive fighting games, and then I list all of the games that are Xbox exclusive fighting games with the help of the chat.
And I also have played that game. It was a very good game and fun to play.
And Allan, of course, is always helpful with the list, but we will not be, unfortunately, be doing the list tonight. I will be returning with EGI2 stream, EGI2 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews on Wednesday, and then we will be back Monday with more surprises from the EGI2 database. And anything that you can do, anything we can do better, we will try to do.
It's very good that you guys are streaming. The list sounds very good, and please don't stop streaming.
Thank you for that, Kate. And I'll always remember what you said about the thing you said about the golden saucer, and then you said the other thing, And that took you a little bit longer to say, and I'll remember that.
Yeah. I couldn't quite get that out.
Good night, everybody.